Recording in progress.
There we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Architectural Review Board meeting for Thursday, September 5th, 2024 in Palo Alto, California. Can we please get a roll call?
Chair Rosenberg,
Present.
Vice Chair Chen,
Present.
Board Member Adcock,
Present.
Board Member Balte,
Present.
Board Member Hirsch.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First up, we have public comment. Members of the public may speak to any item not on the agenda. If you are here to speak about one of the two agendized items, you will have your chance to speak at a later time. So if there's anyone who'd like to comment on something not on the agenda, now is your time to speak. Veronica, do we have any speaker cards or raised hands?
I have no request to speak.
Okay, thank you. On to agenda changes, additions, and deletions.
No changes at this time.
Okay, excellent. And then city official reports.
Yes, good morning. My name is Jody Gerhardt. I'm the manager of current planning. And we'll go over the official report on packet page 7. We have our calendar of future meetings. And then on packet page 8, we are anticipating that next hearing on September 19th, we would be reviewing the 4335 El Camino Real project, which is 29 townhouses. The project is still early in the process, but we wanted to bring that to you so that the architect and the owners can hear, what changes you may request. The other item that we're hoping to discuss is the housing incentive program and the changes that are proposed to that to adhere to our new housing element. As far as pending projects, we don't have any new addresses necessarily, but actually if you stay on packet page 8, the second item, 660 University. I don't have the new number in here just yet because this is brand new, but they did file a builder's remedy project for this same address. And whereas the initial project was 4 stories with a roof terrace, the builder's remedy project is now 6 stories. And so staff will be reviewing that and discussing that later. The other project that we have received some more information about is 3150 El Camino Real. We've been working with these developers. This is on packet page 9. I do have the new file numbers in there. This latest submittal is a code compliant submittal, or at least that's the intent of it. And so staff is still reviewing that to ensure it is code compliant. But the idea is that the city has created a focused area on El Camino, and the developer is hoping to adhere to that to have a more streamlined process. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question, David?
Yes, I do. So does that site fall into the housing sites that we're also discussing next week?
You're asking about 3150?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to misspeak, so I can double check here. I'm sure it is, but I just want to see what the number is. Yes, it is a housing inventory site with at least 113 units allocated to it. And it might be more because it's a couple different properties.
Thanks.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Go ahead.
I had some thoughts about pending ARB projects and that whole piece. Maybe it's better that we discuss it off. We don't have to really discuss it here. We could talk about it privately. We could do it that way. Just the chart itself and how it's made.
So if it's a process or how the formatting is, we can discuss that with Jody offline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a better idea.
Okay. Thank you very much. And on to action item number 2. All right, this is a public hearing quasi judicial, 180 El Camino Real. Recommendation on applicant's request for approval of a major architectural review of exterior storefront revisions and improvements including a redesigned outdoor dining area, facade revisions, new signage, and updated lighting for an existing restaurant tenant, The Melt at Stanford Shopping Center. Staff recommendation is they recommend approval of the proposed project, and we will be hearing from Emily. Is Emily on this one? or is it
Yes,
tomorrow?
Tamara Harrison is our
Tamara Harrison.
consulting planner, and she will be presenting this project. She's online.
Perfect. First, I'd like to ask the ARB for their disclosures.
Yeah.
I disclose I visited the site.
I also visited the site.
I'll disclose that I visited the site earlier this week. While not applicable to this project, I did notice that the Pacific Catch restaurant has now placed a series of umbrellas along the sidewalk in a manner that narrows the width of the sidewalk to less than 8 feet. So I've pointed out to staff,
What restaurant was that?
the Pacific Catch,
Okay.
that's adjacent to this restaurant.
Oh, sorry, I visited the site.
I also visited the site yesterday. Thank you.
Great. And with that, we'll turn it over to Mara Harrison.
Thank you, Chair, board members. Tamara Harrison with Michael Baker International presenting for staff as contract planner, and I will go ahead and share my screen here. Do this. Just a second. Okay. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So again, the project before you is at 180 El Camino Real at the Stanford Shopping Center for The Melt. The site is located within Building E in the center and Suite 705A and faces the Sand Hill Plain entrance. The Stanford Shopping Center, of course, is subject to the Master Tenant Facade and Sign Program. The sign program identifies those buildings or tenants that require a staff level review, indicated by the bold green lines you see on this illustration. And so those storefronts that exceed 35 feet in length require an ARB public hearing, such as the project before you. And those storefronts that are less than 35 feet just require a staff level review. Again, the project is located off of the Sand Hill and London Plain entrance at the Stanford Shopping Center, and it seeks to change the existing facade to accommodate some new improvements for The Melt which is an existing tenant at the restaurant. In addition, there will be, at the center. In addition, there will be a redesign to the outdoor patio, new signage, as well as updated lighting for The Melt. The project does not increase the floor area ratio or the lot coverage for the site, and it does not intend to change the use of the tenant space. But again, the facade improvements will provide updates to the tenant, and those updates will include thin brick flat panels, matte black window film, and new glazing at arches, as well as trim at arches. Painted mullions on existing glazing, black matte panels at the arches. There will be a new motorized garage door. There will also be wooden planks used at the exterior fence for the outdoor patios. There will be a new trellis and umbrellas at the patio, as well as new landscaping via boxwood hedges and planter boxes, as well as the new lighting. The design has been found to be consistent with the master program, as well as the overall character for the Stanford Shopping Center. So here we just have a few illustrations of the existing facade versus the proposed facade. So you can see the north elevation here. And again, the facade has been updated. The color palette has changed. So there's a new warm color palette that has been introduced. There has been new glazing at the window arches as well as the window film, the opaque window film. Again, the metal fencing that you see, the silver aluminum metal fencing at the outdoor patio area will be removed and placed with wooden plank combo fencing, wooden plank and actually black powder coated metal at the patio as well. There will be new signage. And then of course you can see the introduction of the trellis with the string lighting as well from this. Here's just another picture here where you can see, again, the orange umbrellas that exist there will be removed and replaced with a more warm umbrella fabric. Again, you can see the store framing will be changed in the front there, as well as, which you can kind of see in this proposed photo here, there is an elevation that faces the existing Sushi Roku tenant that I'm not sure if they've completed construction, but they're under construction if not completed. But there's existing doors here on this elevation that will also be closed off as a result of the proposal. Excuse me. And then here's just another view a little closer of the patio railing and fencing. You can also see this third archway is kind of where the motorized garage door will be located. Again, this illustration here just shows a little bit closer that side view of the existing doors that face the Sushi Roku patio. And if the ARB recalls, when we had the public hearing for the Sushi Roku tenant, there was a concern about those doors kind of just being left there facing the Sushi Roku patio, and the doors weren't really useful. So the tenant has rectified that situation by closing those doors off here for the melt. As far as the colors and materials, again, there's the thin brick flats that have been proposed on the lower portion of the tenant storefront. Again, the wooden planks that will be used at the fencing, the fabric for the umbrella, it's a canvas fabric, and then you can see the box hedges. Here again, you just can see, I just used a swatch of black to represent the mate panels that will go directly below the arched windows, and then as well as the opaque film for the windows. In addition to the facade improvements, as mentioned, there will be some new signage proposed for the tenant. The municipal code allows for several wall signs within the allowable sign area regulations. So based on the size of the facade for the melt that's there, it's roughly a 25 by 57 frontage, which gives us 1,463 square feet roughly. And an allowance of roughly 79 square feet of sign area for the wall signs. The sign program also allows for 3 square feet of a blade sign. And again, the master tenant program does allow for a wall sign. It allows for primary and secondary wall signs, as well as the 3 square foot blade sign as mentioned. This proposal does include a primary wall sign that's roughly 14 square feet, a secondary wall sign that's roughly 16 square feet, as well as, again, the blade sign that's roughly 2.5 square feet. All of the proposed signage was found consistent with the Palo Alto Municipal Code, as well as the master program for the center. So for key considerations and conditions, staff ensured that the project did conform with the ARB findings, as well as the master program, both for the facade and the signage, as well as the city's sign code. So with that, staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board take the following action and recommend approval of the proposed project facade changes and signage to the Director of Planning and Development Services based on the findings and subject to staff's conditions of approval. So with that, I conclude my presentation and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The tenant, the applicant will now have a chance to present their project as well. You will have 10 minutes if you would like to do so.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Hello, Chair and board members. Pleasure to be in front of you again. Sorry I couldn't make it in person this time. Yes, we have with us today some representatives from the MELT. We have Scott Meyer as well as Ralph Bauer, the CEO, to speak briefly on the project. On Zoom, we have our architectural team, and currently Elena will put up the exhibit that we could walk through with you and present. And then if you have any questions, please let us know. At this time, I'll go ahead and ask Scott and or Ralph to come up to the podium and speak on the project. Thank you. And again, I apologize. It's Jason Smith, JASON SMITH.
Appreciate that, Jason. And if you don't mind, please state and spell your name for the record.
Good morning. I'm Scott Meyer, Director of Development for the MELT, SCOTTMEYER. And just want to say thank you for taking the time to review our project. Scott, this is Ralph Bauer, the CEO of the MELT, and we just wanted to say thanks. And this is a very exciting project for us. It is our oldest store in the chain, so we're looking forward to the improvements, and we're here to answer any questions you may have. And then Aliana is head of the design team, so she'll be on to answer any questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Aliana Ramos, Aliana Ramos, Ramos. I'm a licensed architect with Global Atelier. We're headquartered in Ohio with offices in California. Also joining today, I think he's coming from another meeting, will be Kate, our principal of design and architecture. Our team has done several projects in the Bay Area, and we visited the shopping center multiple times. We really wanted to familiarize ourselves with the area while we developed this design. And while we were there, we felt a close sense of community at the center. It has a strong exterior community dining experience there, and with wonderful adjacent tenants such as the Pacific Catch and Sushi Roku. Adding to what Scott Meyer said, we've been working on this project for a couple of years closely with Scott, and great leadership by Ralph as well. This project in particular has been the basis for the brand's design, interior and exterior going forward. Like he said, it's kind of their flagship store. It's one of the oldest. So a little bit more background on how this concept was developed. The MELT has been working to elevate their design to something warm and classic that will really emulate their slogan, "I love it here." And while developing this, we felt like the store could really enhance a shopping center and provide a great space to enjoy the weather and various seating choices for the many types of groups, friends, and family that do come to visit the MELT. So I'll go through a couple things pretty quickly. Thanks, Tamara, for giving such a great presentation. I feel like it's going to be a little redundant, but I hope to answer any questions that you guys may have, and maybe this quick little summary will help with that. We are proposing to keep the original arches, but we would be removing some of these original canopies that you can see up here. We would also propose to remove the louvers in the arches and replace them with glass. That glass would have 3M black window film to ensure no sight lines to the area above the ceiling at the interior. We would also want to do new paint on the facade and the trim. We'd be removing the white tile that's currently there and apply a new thin brick. We would fix and paint the storefront doors and provide a new garage door to unite the interior and exterior spaces, and also provide new upgraded door hardware. We would install new bronze downlight only sconces and install new signage with the flagship bulb sign that we have developed, slightly different from before. For the patio area, we are also proposing to install new durable UV resistant tech wood and a black metal fence to replace the PC white metal fence that's currently there now. We would be providing new custom millwork of bespoke banquet seating, and they would have integrated planters with boxwood hedges at the fence line. There would also be new tables and chairs. The chairs are metal and black and brushed bronze, and the tables are custom with a slate look, solid tops. We would also be providing new Tucci umbrellas that have integrated heaters and new Tucci cabanas with fixed louvers featured at the roof part for partial shading and atmosphere with warm festoon lighting for the customers. I'm happy to answer any questions. I hope that was a good overview of this project that we are excited to provide at Stanford.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. At this time, the public is able to speak on this project if there are any public speaker cards or any raised hands on Zoom. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak.
I have none for this item.
No one?
No.
All right. Now this project is closed for public comment, and we will turn it over to the ARB for questions for staff or the applicant. Who would like to begin? Okay. Board Member Adcock.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Just a few questions for clarification. There's a note on the report that there's one new bike rack was getting added, but I couldn't tell where it was shown on the plans. Could either Tamara or the applicant, somebody from the applicant clarify that, please?
Yeah, so the city and Stanford has been working on the bike plan layout for the overall Stanford Center. So there is, and I don't have it in front of me, I can pull it up here in a second. There is an existing kind of bike layout, if you will, excuse me, that for the overall center that kind of has where the upcoming stalls will go and versus the existing stalls. So I can pull that. I can't recall if it's clarified, if it's shown here on this particular site plan. Jason, if you recall, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I can pull up our existing layout.
Yes, Tamara, it wasn't specifically identified on our site plan because it was in the background working with Simon and yourself
Right.
under that one exhibit. So it was not placed inside of our plans or exhibits.
Okay.
Okay.
The other question I have is.
Excuse me,
oh,
can I chime in on the
sorry,
bicycle
yes,
question? Just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify to staff. In your report, you sort of say that landlord shall install an additional 24 bike parking places, 20 short-term, 4 long-term. But then your report says this project would add 1 additional short-term bike parking space. Could you please clarify for us how many new bicycle spaces are being added due to this project? And I guess more explicitly,
Right.
where are they going? It seems important.
Yeah. So just for a little clarification on that. So this project itself will only be required to add 1 bicycle space for the size of the tenant space. So what we have been doing as these new ARB projects come forward at Stanford is we are conditioning, since they are currently short on bike parking, we have been conditioning them according to the size of the tenant space. So that 24 spaces that you saw, that 20 spaces that you saw were from previous ARB approvals in the past. So it could have been Sushi Roku, Our House, Backcountry, some of those that we've seen previously. We have conditioned those as well accordingly for bike parking stalls. So that's where you see the difference with the 20 versus the 1. But this particular project will only be conditioned to provide 1 short-term stall. And then again, I can pull up the exhibit for the overall bike parking to show locations. And I'll be doing that in the background.
So is that 1 additional space then requiring the shopping center to add 25 total bicycle parking spaces? 24 is the number we've previously agreed on with them.
Okay, then this would make it 25, correct?
So someplace in this set of conditions of approval, there's going to be 25 new parking spaces still required?
So the other ARB, previously approved ARB projects have already been conditioned for their appropriate number of bicycle parking stalls.
Yes,
So you won't, I'm sorry.
I
Go ahead.
recall vividly worrying about exactly where they were going to go and coming up with a solution, a compromise on the plan for that. So we don't have anything in the package today, you're saying, or describing where the bicycle spaces go.
That is correct. There is an overall exhibit that does identify where all of those bicycle parkings are at. It is not in this specific package we submitted for review today.
Okay, then you've answered the question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Board Member Adcock, for letting me interject.
Oh, of course. It's actually, I have another follow-up question for the staff on this one. So just for clarification, so how does that get, I know like all these projects get conditioned, and is there going to be a separate project to add these bike parkings? Or like, I mean, when a project is conditioned, then by the time the project is approved for construction, then those need to be in the plans, right? So how is that managed from the city side?
Correct. So as a part of the construction document review process or the building permit process, staff would still make sure that the bike parking location is shown consistent with the bike parking layout that we have for the center that we've been working with Simon on. So once we verified that that's all in the plan set, the location is the same, we are okay with it from a building permit standpoint as far as issuance. Prior to final occupancy, planning does also require a final planning inspection to make sure, that everything is consistent with what we have approved. And that would be one of the things that would be checked as a part of that inspection process. And then if everything is consistent and in place, then we can sign off.
Okay, thank you. My few other questions are related to some of the finishes that are being proposed. So on the demo and the proposed note, like where that little trim is across the top, it says prep for paint. Is that trim getting removed and whatever's behind is getting painted, or is there like a stucco repair and all of that as part of the scope? And I assume the stucco texture finish is going to remain what is there now. Is that correct? Looks like a smooth finish stucco.
Right, yeah, we'll be removing this piece of trim up top, you can see on the left, and then patching as needed, but the overall texture above that thin brick will remain the same and it'll just get painted.
Okay. And earlier in your presentation, there's another question. You mentioned that the existing was tile, the white kind of looks like brick pattern. So that's getting pulled out and the new brick is getting glued on in its same place. Is that correct?
Right.
Another finished question is at the bottom where it kind of looks like concrete, the base at the bottom. Is that getting painted that black color that's in the finished palette?
Yes.
Or is that the second, the darker of the gray colors, I guess is my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that'll be the darker of the grays.
Okay.
So I believe that's the palette.
Next question is about those slats. Well, I'm sure others have question about the color, but I'm just going to ask about the spacing. It looks like the slats, I assume the sample we have with us is the actual vertical dimension. Looks like about 6 inch. And what is the spacing that's planned? I couldn't really tell from the drawings what the arrangement is supposed to be.
So it'll be horizontal planks and they will be set kind of as you see here to achieve this. I think it's 42 inches above ground for the top.
So is it like about 6 inches and about 2 inches of spacing? Is that how that's planned?
That'll likely be what it comes out to. final details will have to get coordinated for that piece as it'll be custom.
Okay, but it's planned to be about, just looking at the picture, about 20% open. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's fair.
Okay. And the same fence, is it in the exact same place as the white fence that's there now? Or is it taking
Right.
a little bit more space? The dimensions are not clear on the plans.
No, it's in the exact same spot. This area to the plan north will be getting closed off. So that's the only new addition.
Mhm.
And you can see that that is kind of cut across. But the layout of the patio will remain the same. We're not expanding it at all.
Okay. Last question. Sorry, board members, I have a lot of questions. Is about the light. It says on the drawings that it's getting relocated. And
Mhm.
then on the fixture schedule, there's a light fixture proposed. Is that the one that's there and you're including that fixture on the packet as what's being relocated, or is it getting replaced?
Right. So it'll be relocated. We wanted to make sure the sidewalk had enough clear space so you can have your families walk by, no problem. So we will be relocating the exact same light pole into the interior. We worked with Jason to get the exact spec of what this was, and we had photometrics reran with that in mind.
All right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Board Member Adcock. You have some questions? Oh, Peter's going to jump in.
I have a couple of questions as well for the architect to start with. The brick wainscot that you're replacing, it seems there's an existing white brick wainscot, which is, as best my photos can tell, recessed flush with the plaster above it. And you have a soldier course of bricks at the top as a trim detail. Is that the same detail you're doing here, or will this be applied lower on the facade? My concern is I want to understand how the brick wainscot is detailed at the top where it concludes to avoid seeing just a thin layer of brick there.
Yeah, I believe we're coordinating with the existing height of this tile that's there now. So then that way the texture difference won't be noticeable. You'll still have the change in material will happen at the same elevation.
Okay, thank you very much. Second question is regarding the existing trim around the arched openings, I guess I'll call them. It seems that there's an OG or a rounded profile of some kind to that trim. Are you keeping the same profile or is that being changed?
I believe we are keeping the same profile. We went back and forth of how best to respect the existing architecture and what changes to actually make. And I think we landed on we're going to keep the existing profile, but just paint it that darker gray. So you can kind of see in some of these images where in these renderings that we're emulating that rounded profile.
So I notice on sheet D01.02, keynote number 7, it says prepare existing molding to receive new trim. So what new trim is it receiving then?
That might have been a leftover note. I apologize.
Okay, so
Hey, Aliana. I can step in and answer this. Hi,
Thanks,
everyone.
Kate.
Kate Kellerapata, architect at Globatelli, also principal of design and architecture here. This discussion goes back a bit, and this was actually a planning staff suggestion further down the line to kind of update the arches a little bit. So what we've actually proposed is some very small flex trim profiles to supplement the original arch profile. That would all be painted. It should be applied to look as if it's a part of the arch, but it's meant to sort of highlight the arch and kind of make it a little different than previous.
that sounds wonderful.
Sorry, thanks.
Could you steer me to that detail, please, on the drawings so we can understand what that is? Please.
Yes, the flex trim details, if they're not in that package, we can provide them immediately. I'd have to look at the package and check. I know they were in there at one point, but it's possible that in the process of trying to simplify, there it is. That's it.
0802.
Mm-hmm. So could you zoom way in on that, please, Aliana?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. It's really quite a small detail, but we think applied as shown, it will make enough of a difference to kind of really upgrade the arch profile. It's a precast arch. So it's a quality material, but it looked a little, I would say maybe a little postmodern kind of. We're trying to make it look a little classical.
For clarification, we do not have A08.02 in our printed packet. So that's part of the situation. Oh, mine does not. I don't
I
have that
don't,
in
I
mine.
don't see it here.
I don't have it.
Look, it's
I
a
only
small
have our
detail,
one.
but I'm trying to understand the intent. This is this flex trim is applied on the exterior of this existing masonry molding or in the interior somehow?
Aliana, can you zoom out a little bit, please? And then go over, yeah, to that detail right there and look at that note number.
Fix new
It's hard
flex
for me to read.
trim on inner and outer corner
Yes,
of
it's
existing
number
arch
6. Yeah, and can you zoom in a little bit just to show it? Yeah.
to the notes.
To the elevation 1 where you can see in the upper hand note, there's like a note number 6 and it's pointing to both sides of the arch. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So if you've been out there or want to go out there, you can kind of get a good idea of how that would be incorporated and fit in. And then obviously we rework the new thin brick around it. And you'll see it should work with the interior of the arch because there's already kind of a little gap of brake metal there.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the question answered. I think you've done that. You're intending to apply that molding to both sides of this arch. The next
Yes,
question.
that's right. Thank you.
Good. Next question is regarding the spandrel panel, sort of inside of the arch, the infill. Right now, it's a series of dark metal louvers of some kind that are just opaque. But you're saying you want to put glass there, then what's the material behind the glass? That's S8, I believe. On your rendering.
The film?
Yeah, maybe explain to me, please, what you're going to do on that spandrel panel. Inside the arch. The infill.
Yeah,
of the
so
arch, yes.
plan is to help with the renovations of the interior, which is a different scope, but we want to make sure that the interior can function well and you won't see that from the exterior. So we're proposing that spandrel glass, and then you'll also have that film applied. And so it's just going to be like a matte black just on the interior. So from the outside, you'll see the glass, but you won't be able to see through it. But you'll still have that feeling that there's glass there.
I see. And what is the reason for changing it from the metal that's there now? Seems to have the same effect.
Right now we have 2 arches with metal louvers, and then we have one that was previously infilled over the entry. So you'll see that one is like a flat painted black in the existing. We think that was done with the previous renovation. What we're trying to do is unite all 3 arches with the same treatment. So we're removing the canopies. And then the idea is we're applying that flat spandrel to cover structure behind across all 3. That's actually a MAPES infill panel that's mounted in the mullions. And then we have above the glazing in all 3. So the intent is unite. And then of course, behind, if the glazing were clear, you would see above the tenant ceiling. So we've then provided the film behind.
Okay, is the ceiling inside below the level of this arch infill? I imagine it must be.
It is, yes. It's a drop ceiling.
Okay, thank you very much for answering that question.
Can I ask a clarification question
Sure.
on that, please? Because I heard matte black film, I heard MAPES panel. And the renders make it look like it's white. And I also heard spandrel. So what is it?
Okay. Starting from the top, what you see is glass. The glass has a 3M matte black film behind. Then at the bottom at the spring point of the arch, you have a mullion, and then you have a mullion above the doors below. Between there is a MAPES panel mounted in the mullion. Does that answer the question?
Where the signage goes? Okay.
Yeah.
The upper
And
is
I
supposed to
agree.
be-
It looks, apologize. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I think that's what you're getting at. It looks white, but you're saying it's supposed to be matte black.
That's correct. Yes. I think that's rendering kind of trying to reflect, and I agree it does look whiter in these images than typically it would. Hopefully just like a reflective glass, it should look darker in reality.
That makes sense. Thank you. On the new signage over the entry door, the words World, Burger, and Meltiest, are those individual letters somehow cut as signs, or is that whole thing a sign box with these 3 bits of text in the sign?
So I think they prepare this as an entire sign. As you can see, it's in the sign package. They provide one full length, and you can kind of see how they prepare the backing a bit.
But each
Kate, are you able to
individual, yeah,
Are they
yeah,
are
sorry.
they individual letters? I'm sorry, I haven't seen this be installed yet, so I'm actually not quite sure.
No, that's okay. Yeah, they are individually letters, each one mounted individually, and then of course the LTist is one item.
So where is the delineation for the Meltiest then? When I'm looking at sheet A11, the signage detail, it's Worlds and Burger, the 2 words on the left and the right are individual letters mounted per detail 2.1, I gather. And then the Meltiest in the middle is its own can that sticks out. Seems like the Meltiest would be different
Yeah.
if it was individual letters.
If you look at, so the Meltiest has an M, and then the rest, the LTist is one piece. That is the top right detail that you see. So it's actually technically 2 pieces. And then the Worlds and Burger are the ones below there. It's a little hard to see, but it says like World/Burger. That's that detail. So they actually come out the same distance from the wall, and then they both have the LEDs within, but then they also have the amber acrylic rod, which is like a bulb light in the M and the LTist.
Great. Thanks for the clarification on that. Sure.
Just have I'm going to jump in here as well for that. Do we have a dimension for that sort of leftmost of the M to the right of the T? Do we have a dimension for that? Just out of curiosity.
The 18 inches?
No, the side to side.
Oh, the side to side. I know what
We
you're
do not in
asking.
the set, but we could provide that as a follow-up very easily.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, if you had it off the cuff.
I might be able to scale it by the end of the meeting if you don't want me to do that in the background. Okay.
Not a problem. And for staff, just to clarify that they are measuring the overall dimension of 18 inches by 128 inches for the signage square footage. And then it is in compliance. Is that all accurate?
Correct. That
Great.
is correct.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, I want to just interject real quick. As far as the plans that you have in front of you, it looks as though the signage package portion of it may have been placed somewhat center of the package, so that sheet A08.2 comes right after the signage package, and it picks up with the remaining sheets. It appears to be slightly out of order from the sheet index. I apologize for that.
Thank you for that clarification. You're absolutely correct. It doesn't make the trim any larger, unfortunately.
And I'm noticing you've got that scale to about 49 inches. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you. So I also have a question about the elevation design just above the entrance door. So in your rendering on the on sheet number 2 of A11, that the rendering on the left, it seems there is some projections stick out above the entrance door, but on the elevations and sections, it seems like it's just a flat piece above the door. So could you please clarify the design?
I think the sign package didn't have like the latest and greatest design. So I would refer you to the renderings that we have on G00.40A and G00.40B. That's the accurate depiction for the renderings. So you can see there's the canopies and the overhangs have been removed from that. I think that's what you were asking.
Right, okay, so, but there's still like okay, so that is the light box that stick out, and then the lower part is just,
Yeah, we have this canopy
okay.
here, but that's not connected to the building.
No, I mean, just above the entrance door, like there is a horizontal line, you can see a shadow line just below the logo, the words Maltese Burger.
This
So-
mullion.
So that molding, does it continue all the way to the garage door or?
And Aliana, can you zoom in on the elevation on the right? I think the rendering might require a slight correction. My understanding is those letters can be mounted directly and that can be coordinated from the back of the store after demo. So I believe we need to update that rendering to omit that line. The intent is to have a solid panel.
Okay, so the elevation is the correct one without the reveal line, is it correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And all your letters are just on the top part of the plate.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Mostly for visibility based on some of the
Uh-huh.
sight lines from the views.
Okay. And another question, maybe to the staff. So in your presentation, you said FAR is not increased, but in the report, it said the permanently covered area will count towards the gross floor area. So I want to know, could you please clarify that? And also for the permanently covered area, does it matter if it is fully covered or if it is like the trellis, it might be like 50% covered? Does it affect the numbers?
Yeah, so let me clarify, and I apologize for any inconsistencies there, but the proposed trellis that's going to be put up here will be considered remaining 50% open. So then it will not have any kind of covered gross floor area, if you will. So there wouldn't be the area under that trellis, since it's going to remain at least 50% open, wouldn't be counted towards any additional gross floor area.
Just want to clarify. So the proposed outdoor seating area, it will not count towards the gross floor area. Is it correct?
Correct. So it will not be increasing the covered area or the gross floor area in any manner.
Oh, okay. So which means we on packet page 19, we should update it because it is that the 408 square footage of exterior dining area will be permanently covered and.
Correct. There were some additional clarifications that were made after the staff package had gone out. And so all of that will be updated before we send out any approvals to the applicant's team or before any approval is made by the director.
Could you please explain how you qualify whether a outdoor area is considered covered and therefore counting towards floor area?
So Tamara, let me explain. So as Tamara was saying, on the trellises, if they are 50% open, so the slats, the rain can come through the slats on a trellis, then we do not consider that to be covered. We do not consider that to be FAR. The same is true for umbrellas, just your sort of standard umbrella that goes up and down. We do not consider that to be a roof and therefore not FAR. Anytime you have a more solid roof, if there was a 100% solid cover, then that would be considered FAR. And so we certainly have other restaurants in the shopping center where exterior dining area is counted towards gross floor area because they have that solid roof over them.
That would be Pacific Catch, for instance, has a solid dining roof over it.
Yes,
but this
True Foods is another one, yes.
So here, if they stretch a fabric over those slats, that's not considered part of the 50% calculation?
If they stretch a fabric over that, that would be considered covered.
Okay, so to the applicant, there's a piece of fabric on the sample board and some language here about covering. What is the intent of this roof covering?
That is for these two key umbrellas.
I see. Okay, so the slatted area does not have any additional covering over it?
The slatted area will not, no. It is just for the umbrellas that can be shifted down, tilted, as she said, for the rain to come through if they need to that away. But the slatted area will remain. These are fixed. There's nothing going to go over them.
And I'm glad that she said they were fixed, because to clarify, there are some trellis type features where the slats move locations, and those would be considered covered.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Okay, I just want to follow up the permanently covered area. So since the existing condition, there is the canopy attached to the wall, which is glazing, which has the glasses on it, or so, which means if that is being removed, then the gross floor area actually will be reduced. Is it correct? And that will
It depends. Is it over the front door? Is that the canopy we're talking about?
no, yeah, the two on the right.
The two on the right are not glass. The glass one is
Okay.
over the front door.
Yeah. So the front door, when we're looking at the original melt, the front door would not be considered floor area because it's not being used for tables. But yes, those other two canopies are permanently covered. And if there's tables under there, which likely is the case, then you are correct that we would actually be reducing the square footage.
All right, I'll jump in here. I have exactly two questions. First of all, actually, no, I only have one now. Everybody else covered everything else. So I have a question in regards to the wood color of the fencing. So the sample we have, Peter, if you don't mind handing that to me, thank you. The sample we have is a very walnut colored wood. And if you compare it with this wood behind me, it's sort of an oak. There we go. Hang on. There we go. So this oak color behind me is really what's appearing more in the renderings. Can you confirm the color of the wood that we'll be using is this sample? Stated as Spanish walnut.
Spanish walnut. Yes.
Okay. And so
That
is it
is-
just to be this dark?
That is correct. Yes. So in
Okay.
the renderings, because of the sunlight on it, it did render brighter, that the intent is to have it be that darker Spanish walnut.
Yeah, I know we can't always get renderings perfect. So I just wanted to.
Sorry.
We understand.
Okay. Thank
Um,
you.
All right. Appreciate that clarification. And at this point, I think that's it. Everyone else has covered all of my other questions. Thank you.
You have a garage door that opens up onto the ceiling inside. I assume that stays open during proper good weather outside? How's that? Can you describe the function of that a bit?
Yeah, that's the intent, is that, it'll provide that indoor, outdoor open space. So like, as long as the weather's good, the workers will probably have it open. Our patio, the umbrellas do have some heaters there, so it'll help even if it gets a little bit cooler. But that'll be to the discretion of the team that's working there. But it is the intent to have it open during most of the working hours.
Including wintertime, you're saying?
Well, depending on how nice your winters are. It'll just depend on the weather. If it feels comfortable for customers to want that outdoor air, then they'll probably have that open. So probably not 365 days out of the year, but I would say a good portion.
I think, and Scott at the Melt could verify this too, but every time we visit the store, it's quite hot in there. They're not able to keep windows and doors open really because they have an open kitchen. Part of the interior remodel is closing the kitchen off and then allowing them to achieve this. So I think it's for employee comfort. It's for kind of a community feel between interior and exterior and outside. And I think we're hopeful that, given that it's in Palo Alto, that it would see a lot of use.
So let's say during really cold weather or rainy weather, you'd be entering via a double door that opens out.
That is right, the
Right.
main entry. And that's the only place to get into the patio and the property. That's right on the left there in front of the front doors.
So that door is a part of this. I mean, it's shown differently on the two different drawings. Is that a part of the garage door? Is
I
that-
see what you're asking. The elevation on the right, the storefront detail, you'll see there's this garage door, but then this is a breakaway. This is this for egress. So that's not intended to
Be
be
operable.
like the main entry and, exit of the space, but it will be operable. You can see it is a separate piece from the garage door. So
Oh, I
it
see.
provides a second means of egress, even if the garage door is closed.
Okay. So during really inclement weather, that will be the door that you enter the whole facility from.
This will be the door here in red, and then this garage door, if the weather's bad, cold, whatever, this area in blue, you can still use this single door, but the garage door can be closed. If it's nice out, it might be open, but you can technically still use that door if needed. But the one in red will be the main in egress and ingress and egress.
I'm sorry, I'm still a bit confused. I think that the door that is the entry is shown in this picture as if it's a double door that opens out. Is that correct? But it is also,
Right.
it is also a garage door?
No.
No, the one in blue is the garage door. So
Is the other one?
yes, that's the garage door with the single swing door. But the main entry will be the double doors.
Will
So
be
yeah,
consistently.
these double doors are different than this garage door.
Okay. All right. So the garage door comes in and covers up some of the ceiling. I don't know, you have a reflected ceiling plan as to the lighting of the inside? How does it, is that taken into consideration that it will close over existing lighting on the inside of the building at that location?
So it'll go over where the ceiling is being dropped down. And that will get developed with the interior package, but we have discussed how to do that, what plane it needs to be at to make sure it will clear the lighting that's in there. So it will not cover it when it's open.
Okay.
So
You
just
can
to clarify, yeah, so you've got this, exactly what you're pointing out. So you've got this garage door coming up, your motor shown there. And you're saying that there'll be a dropped interior ceiling below that. So the garage door gets hidden by the dropped ceiling? No, you're saying the other
No.
way, correct?
It has to be inside of it,
Right. The ceiling would be
lower than.
for the main plane, but like this would be the plane of the ceiling approximately maybe like 10 feet.
And the garage door will continue back that way, sort of hidden by the ceiling.
Correct.
Okay, understood.
That's going to create a lot
very
of
cool.
detail issues. On the brick and siding and turning of the corner between the Sushi Roku and the Melt, you carry the same stucco color material around the corner? And then how about the brick?
So, right. So you will still be painting up here. That's the P12. We'll be wrapping the brick just at this column. And then you can see keynote 20. We will be painting to match the adjacent tenant's finishes. So that's kind of where we're bridging that gap of they just have something new. There's a patio being used right there. We're wrapping just this short amount where that column ends, and then where their patio comes out, that's kind of where the transition is.
Okay. On this lighting that the post lighting, which is also sidewalk lighting really at the same time, is that is in replacing a fixture that's on the perimeter at the roadway edge there?
So we were working with, I believe it was planning that had, really wanted to have this sidewalk more open. So we decided to pull that into our patio space. That way you have the clear sidewalk. You still have some lighting that is dispersed from that main street lamp, if you will. And it'll still provide a little bit of light throughout that area. And I have some renderings of that as well. So that was kind of like our intent. You'll still have this clear space with what we proposed. You'll have this clear space at the sidewalk. Because it was a little tight with the street lamps. You can kind of see in this picture better. That's like a real picture. So now they'll be moved into our patio. You'll still get a little bit of that lighting dispersed throughout the sidewalk.
Yeah, I would add too that the existing condition, the light poles are non-compliant with the 8-foot required clearance. So we decided that we could take them into the patio to keep the lighting spaced equally along the sidewalk, but then to provide the clearances as currently required.
That becomes yours to maintain, or who the shopping center maintains those fixtures, or what?
The shopping center would still maintain those two fixtures. They are shopping center fixtures. We've just slid them into our space to achieve that 8-foot clear.
Mm-hmm. Are they modulated in some way so that the brighter light that you see here shining down doesn't also shine into the dining area there? Or will the canopy that you have there kind of limit that?
They are not modulated. I think because they are so tall, you can see how high they go up here. I think we're showing the actual height in our elevation as well. And we've had the photometrics kind of take them into consideration, but because they're up so high, it does get dispersed. Again, it's a rendering. We're trying to emulate what the conditions are, but the photometrics will really tell the story, and like the festoon lightings that we have throughout, you have a similar amount of brightness because it's at a lower elevation as you do with this higher street light.
Okay, your photometric engineer, whatever, has examined that and determined that that should work, huh?
Right.
Okay. I think that sort of does it.
Can I
for me.
follow up on the lighting question?
Thanks, David.
This is actually 2 questions or 3 geared towards the shopping center, Mr. Smith. Is there a consistent plan for sidewalk lighting on this edge of the shopping center? I can't recall, but it seems odd that you would have just 2 of these moved invasively into the dining area, not being consistent with what you're doing at the rest of the shopping center. Staff's approach to get the 8-foot clearance is important and correct. That's something we've insisted on. But I'm wondering if you have an overall solution. This is something that's come up on several shops. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you for the question. At this time, there isn't an overall plan put in place to relocate the shopping center lights. I think it's going to be on a case-by-case basis when it impedes pedestrian flow in front of patio areas, and just to provide the required 8-foot clear access. So at this time, there is not a plan to do further changes to the existing lighting on site.
Staff, would this be something we could put as a condition that we get the shopping center to provide a long-term plan for these lights so that on a case-by-case basis, they're all working towards the same solution?
One thing I might interject here, Peter, is that you're putting an onus on the applicant for something that's a Stanford Shopping Center's responsibility.
Well, the applicant is formally the shopping center.
they're
So,
Correct,
working
but that's
together.
also the melt, right? So you're putting this on the melt that their project is going to potentially get held up because the Stanford Shopping Center needs to assess their own lighting situation. And I don't think that's fair.
I think
it's just a question to staff. Let me see if we can answer the question.
Yeah, so I think we can handle this similar to how we're handling the bicycles, that we have sort of this longer term plan that we will eventually, make all of these compliant with that 8-foot open space.
Okay, we'll get to this in our discussion. I just wanted to see if it's
well, just,
feasible.
I might jump in here on that because it seems that the lighting of the sidewalk is the responsibility of the shopping center, the outer sidewalk element there. And there ought to be some, just to add the detail to what this ought to be like, is that there ought to be some kind of a standard for lighting on the sidewalk, which is shopping center wide, that there, and does this satisfy it? Have you looked into it that in moving the fixture to the inside like that, you get sufficient lighting on the sidewalk itself?
And just to add to that, David, just looking at the photometric, which is really hard to read, there seems to be areas along the sidewalk that is under 1 foot candle. So just based on that, given that they're showing that as part of the egress path, and it would be part of the egress path, that would be a driver, correct, for at least the building permit stage. Yeah, all those 0.9 and there's 0.8 up top. I assume the edge of this, or these numbers, is the edge of the sidewalk. It's shown as
Right.
reflected ceiling plan, but I assume the numbers are supposed to be on the sidewalk itself.
Right. And I think it is hard to tell because we are not showing the sidewalk on these RCPs. But to your point, what we did was just shift it over from where they were originally and try to keep them close in line with that while still, utilizing this patio so that you have a nice, well-lit area. But I think you're right, because they're pulling the original lighting plan away from where the sidewalk was. You are getting some of these low points at 0.9
Yes. Yeah.
in between the streetlights at the edge of the sidewalk. You're right.
We'll get into this in our discussion, but it is basically the wrong fixture for the location you're putting it in. The second question I had in the same vein is regarding the ADA ramp, which is an existing condition, but it does impede into the 8-foot width of the walkway. And if I remember right, on Pacific Catch again, we had requested that they provide clearance in addition to that ramp width. But staff, do you remember, or can you say what this is an unofficial policy, really, this 8-foot width. How have we interpreted that regarding the ADA ramps projecting into that?
So it is an unofficial policy, but it has been consistently applied in the last many years, that we are trying to keep this 8-foot clearance for pedestrians around, all of the different tenant spaces. I don't know that we've run into a handicap ramp. So I don't really have an answer.
Right in front of the door to the Pacific Catch, right next door to this. And we asked Bevelin to chamfer the corners of their seating area to allow that clearance.
I can speak to that. We chamfered the corners of the patio area for the egress coming into the space. There was an existing tree that we wanted to retain, and to achieve that and provide egress on each side, the entry points were chamfered for the Pacific Catch project.
Okay. Thank you for that
I
clarification.
recall that to be the reason as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, it's great to hear that. Mr. Smith, again, just to the right of the new Melt store is a service entrance to the shopping center with a canopy that matches those of the Melt shopping center right now. Is there any plans to change that canopy or do anything to that entrance to make it more compatible visually?
That entry actually was updated about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago now, during another project approval that came through the board. And so at this time, there's no further plans to update that.
But it does, right now, it has the same canopy as it's existing in front of the melt. So just to be clear, we're going to be left with one of these projecting canopies supported by rods going back to the building. Is that right?
Yes, there will be, correct.
Okay, thank you for that. I have no other questions.
Okay, any other final questions from the board before we go into our internal discussion? All right, we will be.
Well, I just wanted to, I got one.
Go ahead.
It's a very casual treatment of lighting within the melt itself there. Fellow board members, looking at the lighting diagrams, are we all satisfied, those of you who perhaps know a little bit more about the amount of light that will be sufficient for that eating area?
Let me ask it this way. Is that a question that we should be having for the ARB discussion, or is that a question for the applicant or staff?
Well, a question to the applicant does it meet standards that in every area that are appropriate for outdoor eating?
Hi, so we don't have on the call our lighting designer, but we did consult with a lighting designer on this project, and she's familiar with the required lighting levels. So she's gone through and checked and actually performed the photometrics.
And are you saying therefore you've shown that, or she has agreed that it is sufficient in all cases for basically for the use of the space?
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Okay. Take her word for it, I guess.
Okay. At this point, we're going to close the question session, and we're going to have an internal ARB discussion. Is there someone who'd like to kick us off on that?
Well, I
Thank
suggest
you.
we
Thanks
talk
very
about
much.
these light fixtures,
Sure.
Kendra, because I
Start there.
think this is a good place to start. You brought up a good point that it's really not appropriate to condition the melt. We want to
Right.
get them approved with their restaurant and get it built with these light fixtures for the shopping center. On the counter side to that, it's the wrong solution to put those industrial level light fixtures right over the dining tables. It's not going to work. It's going to force them to put something on top of their canopy, which creates FAR issues. It goes on and on. The real solution is that the shopping center needs to have a fixture solution for what the standard thing is, and then they can chip away at getting it put into effect with every one of these projects.
Agreed.
I support that we just have staff get that standard from them. Then these two fixtures would be made to that solution.
Okay.
Either the fixture's got a different kind of shielded thing that casts light only to the sidewalk, or it needs to be placed at the edge of the sidewalk by the street.
Well, so I'm of two minds about this, because I think that part of David's question was whether or not that the lighting underneath this canopy, these little string lights, was sufficient, right? In conjunction with these two streetlights, I think it's plenty. The question is if the harshness of these streetlights is really going to be what the melt wants. But on that note, we can't exactly have Stanford Shopping Center going around asking each individual restaurant what they would like for their streetlights. It's got to be more consistent than that. I actually thought it was a very clever solution to shift those inboard. I have personally been super annoyed by those right in the middle of the sidewalk on more than one occasion. So the fact that they would be moved out of the sidewalk, I think, is a benefit. The question at this point would basically be if the melt is satisfied with these street lamps, because they are what Stanford Shopping Center uses already. Having them shifted in, and as they will be maintained by Stanford Shopping Center, once they get a comprehensive plan together for what fixtures they're going to use, how they're going to use them, I think that's an appropriate time for Stanford Shopping Center to switch them out. But to put this onus on the melt seems inappropriate to me. On that note, and this is, I'm looking at Jody while I'm saying this, I am curious about whether or not we need to actually have a meeting with Stanford Shopping Center to discuss these items, because we have repeat items where there's 8-foot widths around Stanford Shopping Center, bike rack questions, ADA ramp questions, lighting questions. Are we getting to a point where we really need to sit down at Stanford Shopping Center and have a full meeting to understand this, so this doesn't keep coming up every single time there's a new tenant coming in?
I think let staff talk to Simon and give us a minute to kind of pull some things together.
Absolutely.
And then we certainly could have a study session with the ARB to discuss the matter.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you, Jody.
I'd like to just add a wrinkle on that is that I don't mind the idea of having those fixtures that are attached to the, but they should be specific to this use, and they're kind of monitors of the corner of this, they have an aesthetic value by being there as well. But they don't have to be that kind of particular fixture. And I agree with you that that particular fixture is appropriate for a street edge, but not for this particular use.
Agreed. I think that the concern is that if we start to get inconsistent, right? So if it's all of a sudden these two lights are the only special lights, right? And then the next one down wants a different type of lighting, but Stanford Shopping Center has to maintain it.
Shouldn't be a condition of lighting the sidewalk.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's going both ways because now it's being pulled towards basically the dining area of the Melt, but it's lighting the sidewalk.
Correct.
Right, but there are also canopies or the umbrellas that are directly adjacent, which looking at the photometrics, I can't tell if that's being taken into account because I see the outline of the umbrellas and you would think the umbrella is cutting the light down to the ground, but the numbers don't state that. So
I'm not sure the umbrellas would be open at nighttime as part of this.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's kind
They
of
might
like,
be.
then it's making like the need of the light is contingent upon whether the umbrella is open or not, which seems odd.
But I don't think you'd ever be at nighttime with the umbrellas open unless you're trying to actively cut the light, right? The umbrella's a sunshade
Well,
predominantly.
like if you look at the renders, it's obviously
It's open,
lights
but
are
that's a
on and,
rendering, right?
Yeah, so but then it's like the lighting controls is tied to the umbrellas. Like if somebody leaves the umbrella open, just because it's not necessary, it may not necessarily be closed. But then it is going to cut the light to the sidewalk.
But it won't cut the light to the sidewalk. It would only cut the light to the space that's dining below. And then that's the Melt's prerogative to do, right?
I suppose,
The
yeah.
umbrella doesn't extend over the sidewalk, so I don't think it would impact the public right of way. So I
Yeah.
think that's acceptable.
And the two lights as they're being moved are no longer in alignment to the edge of the sidewalk because it's now aligned to what works well for the Melt's patio.
I thought that the Melt patio was in alignment with the sidewalk, that it had
Sort of, but that's when the sidewalk turns. So the upper on A 3.01, the pole at the upper part of the plan is closer to the building than the pole at the lower part of the plan. So it kind of goes back to Peter's question, what is the larger lighting layout and plan for this area that's not, each tenant is doing its own thing.
Got it. Okay, so I'm looking at G00.30, which was just up on the screen a second ago as well. And that I can see that as well, where you've got that bottom right-hand light fixture here in that area. And then this one's actually is shifted inboard that
Right.
way a little bit. Understood. Okay, then the question is if that, is something that's easily fixed by maybe this light fixture's right there at the corner, and then at least they're in alignment. The other thing I did notice was that it looks like the existing light fixture is here, it's not quite, it's not in the entryway, but it's not all the way out at this corner, right? It does look like this one does get shifted down that way from the existing conditions. But
It's shown on the demo plans on D 1.01. It's quite different, actually. You can see, it's my little pointer. It's up. If you stop moving it, I will, here and here.
I'm looking at D01.01A.
Yeah,
It's not,
where I
oh, there we
squiggled
go.
on the screen is where they are right now.
Beautiful, right? And so to go all the way down to here
Yeah, so that's going there,
And that
that's
one-
going there.
is sort of just
And-
going straight back. So I'm wondering if maybe the solution's a little easier and we'll solve both problems, is that maybe this one is sort of right there and this one is right there, then at least they're closer together. Again, that's not necessarily for us to dictate either.
Correct.
If I could, what I've heard staff say is they want time to work this out with the shopping center.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for the board to coalesce around what I hope is an idea that this does need to be resolved with this project. So all we're really doing is putting a condition on this project that these lights get resolved somehow. The resolution may well be they're going to remove these lights, and new lights will be put in when the future design is done.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that. I don't mind wanting this project to go forward.
Right.
But the solution that's presented here, honestly, is just a ad hoc thing somebody threw in when Tamara told them to move the lights out of the sidewalk. It wasn't a thought through design, and it's not. And this will only harm the restaurant. We want them to succeed. But I'm perfectly okay, Board Member Rosenberg, with conditioning this kind of thing on an applicant. That's the whole point of us being here, is to get better things done. We've done it consistently throughout the shopping center.
Mhm.
This whole notion of clearing the sidewalk to 8 feet is exactly that.
Right.
When when the shopping center was built, the sidewalks were 20 feet wide. They didn't have tables everywhere. The lighting fixtures made sense at the time. Times change. We want to keep adjusting so everything works together.
Mhm.
So I would think that we should just agree or not agree to have a condition of approval that this gets resolved somehow. And then staff is very capable of doing that with the shopping center, in my opinion.
Okay.
At the same time, we're disapproving the idea of using street lighting at those corners then.
Well, I would just like to see a real solution for how you light the sidewalk safely and attractively at this whole edge of the shopping center.
Without blinding the diners.
Goes on for hundreds of feet. And
Of
we've had
course.
this, it keeps becoming a problem. And it's tied into the fact that we want the sidewalk to have a minimum width of 8 feet, which we've also discussed.
So we're not expecting the issue to be resolved, that there'll be 8 feet clear of lighting fixtures then. Otherwise, we're going to burden the shopping center.
We have,
doing
no,
new curb
we
lights.
have said that we want 8 foot of clear pedestrian walkways.
Well, it's going to be a problem with
And-
these light fixtures
Well,
then.
Mr. Smith needs to be listening to us a little more closely because it keeps coming up and the shopping center keeps putting this on a case-by-case basis. We've had these discussions with the shopping center before, but I think Board Member Rosenberg, it's a mistake to just keep saying, well, it's a case-by-case basis. We don't want to harm individual applicants. The applicant is the shopping center. The shopping center is owned by the university. We need these things to be taken care of and addressed, and they're only done when we insist on things.
No, I agree that this needs a more comprehensive, thoughtful plan, but I disagree with the concept that it's Stanford Shopping Center that's applying for it. You have the Melt, which is a tenant, right? And this is, if this doesn't get approved, they don't get to do their work. And that's where my issue comes in, is that I don't think that something that's the responsibility of the Stanford Shopping Center should be put as a burden or an impediment for the tenants specifically. I think that the tenant has done a nice job presenting a project here, and that if we're gonna hold it up or delay it or cause some sort of issue because of something that really does fall on Stanford Shopping Center's table, I don't see how that's gonna encourage any tenants.
If I may,
Sorry.
if we take a look at Pacific Catch, and if we also look down further where Sprinkles and Tesla are, these similar lights are installed, but they are installed much closer to the curb.
Correct.
And so that seems to be a potential solution.
But then it would
Um,
impede on the 8-foot clearance.
Yes, so
Right.
that would be the question of, I mean, the 8 feet is a guideline that we have set, staff and the ARB. Are we willing to allow light fixtures like this to encroach upon that 8 foot, or do we want a true 8 foot clear?
Well, and at this point, it definitely goes back to a comprehensive plan from Stanford Shopping Center that maybe on this stretch, they have to put it at 7-foot clear because we need those light
So
fixtures
maybe
to be along
in
the curb.
limited circumstances, we could allow
Right.
some encroachments.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
And for what it's
I
worth,
think that's
actually,
critical.
I do think it's a little bit more appropriate to have these light fixtures out towards the curb because you have people tripping over that curb otherwise. So, yeah, but again, it's one of those that I would say, I would just caution the board that instead of having a very specific solution, we should be a little bit more thoughtful about leaving this open-ended to find out what that solution is going to be without holding up the potential development of this project
But I
on the
think
Melt.
we need to condition this approval with not using streetlights as part of the lighting strategy for the outdoor dining itself.
correct.
Based on the foot candles, it seems to be accounting for it. So it likely needs more string lights or something else if they want to maintain this 3 to 4 foot candle level in the patio, but they're counting on these streetlights to do that.
Okay, that seems fair.
I'm seeing the sidewalk dimensioned at 8 feet 2 inches. So if we sort of informally say we can stretch our policy to having up to a 1-foot projection into that 8-foot width for things like streetlights, That would give them a solution and give staff something to run with.
I agree with that.
So if we condition basically what Board Member Adcock said, that the streetlights are not an appropriate way to light the dining area. And so they should be located in a different fashion. That seems to solve everybody's question mark.
Yep.
I do strongly think that the shopping center should come to a solution with staff overall. If it is just relocating all these fixtures, that's fine, but at least they have a clear policy. They might think harder about it because it's still not the best solution for narrow sidewalks.
But we should be definite about this. I agree that I think our opinion is pretty much formed. There has to be some form of encroachment. You've suggested something, Peter, and that's not unreasonable. But it could be a dimension of encroachment that is limited in all cases.
Well, I'd say we're being quite reasonable because this 8-foot width is an arbitrary thing that's evolved because of the
Yes.
amount of space the shopping center has rented people of the sidewalk.
Mhm.
That's arbitrary. Other merchants and stores are given less space, so we have a wider sidewalk. It's all relative stuff here. We
Yeah.
could easily ask them just to push back the dining area a foot to keep the 8-foot clearance.
Oh, we don't want to do that one either
Well,
at this
I'm not sure we
point.
want to get into that, but sooner or later, this keeps getting pushed around. So just having a clear standard that we enforce is really what's important here. And I think allowing up to a 1-foot encroachment into that width is a fair standard. So
Okay. Overall, I would like to just circle back to the materials, the quality. I mean, that is sort of our primary goal here is to make sure that A, the project works and is functional with any sort of remodels they're proposing, and then B, that we like the aesthetics of it, that the aesthetics are appropriate and respectful of the community as well. So just to start us off, I'm going to say overall, I think that this is quite an elevation in the design of this building. I think it's definitely going in the right direction. So I don't have a lot of complaints on that front. One minor comment I have is I actually kind of prefer the oak color of the rendering. I know that's a small item, but it sort of ties in with the light fixtures a little bit more nicely. This is kind of dark and heavy, and I would be concerned that you're sort of with the grays and the blacks and everything, it's just getting very dark and very serious. Just my opinion on it. I think there's nothing wrong with this. I don't think it's going to be a problem for the project if you decided to stay with the American walnut, but I do think that everything is just quite dark and that the renderings actually provided a bit of lightness to it and, you know, orange-ish reference. So
Can agree. I think that the brick is lightening up that whole facade a little bit. So why not the outer element as well? Seems like it's just
beautiful.
extremely heavy with a dark black walnut look to it.
I second that. In fact, I think I would insist that it goes lighter. I mean, I think looks like a natural walnut versus this is a dark stained walnut. And overall in the elevations, the color combination of the melt sign, the brick and the lighter fencing has, a language to the whole finish palette that works well together versus this is kind of part of the darker tones and it's a very different look and feel than what we're seeing on the screen.
Agree. I would also just like to touch very quickly on the gray color. I actually do think that's quite complimentary also of the neighbor Sushi Roku. I was just there the other week and it's, that one came out beautifully. And I think a slight nod to the ARB for that. But I think that this gray is actually quite respectful of their neighbor in that front. And actually it will tie this whole facade, the whole length of it together quite nicely. So kudos for that.
is there a color palette that the restaurant is aiming to shoot for across all their restaurants though? We don't want to mess up with any design thing. Do you want to ask them up for that? Are they okay with changing this color?
I mean, I'm seeing a yes. Okay. Okay, thank you.
I was hoping to address the detail around the arch. This flex trim application, I don't understand how it works. I'm looking at photos I took and that existing molding is sort of rounded as it comes to the plaster and the brick. And I think it's a mistake to change it actually. Or if you're going to change it, really change it.
Yeah,
Why possible
I'm
that?
totally confused about that too, because I don't see a dimension to the existing molding. I see the dimension to the little add-on piece, and I have no idea how that relates to the existing.
Yeah, I took a bunch of photos when I was out there. I can't share them in the meeting. It's not appropriate, but take my word for it that the profile is rounded as it joins the plaster. So there's just no way for an extra piece of molding to be applied.
So would your recommendation be to just paint what's existing and not add the additional piece?
Exactly. I think what's there is, yeah, it's 1980s sort of retro, but just giving it a coat of paint will make it look like the rendering. Adding a piece will just look like too much. It's too bright a lipstick, in my opinion. Or
I'm
change
looking at the
whole thing.
applicant as well, and they're giving us a nod of seeing that they're acceptable with that as well.
So my bigger concern had to do with what I call the spandrel panels, the arched infill. I think it's a mistake if they end up looking like the rendering where they're sort of a bright white or a brighter white. So they said that, but their rendering is showing what glass looks like when it reflects, and even dark glass reflects light. So I don't have an answer necessarily, but I support the architect's statement that they want to make them consistent across all three. That seems like a good design objective. I'm not sure some sort of metal panels might not be a better solution.
Oh,
I don't want to tell them what to use, but I think spandrel glass will be much better than film on the back. Oh, sorry. I was just saying that spandrel glass with a black finished coating on #2 surface will read a lot better than film on the inside.
Yeah, and that's not a cost kind of thing, is it? That's just,
Shouldn't be, no.
yeah, I would think that's a fair thing. It's just
Yeah.
require that.
Because even when it reflects like dark spandrel glass with a dark finish on the #2 surface will read dark.
Yeah, I
even
think
in
that's
the
that's a
reflection.
better solution.
Yeah.
And it's an easy thing to do. And I wanted to suggest for your garage door, it seems forced to me that you have a human door next to it, which probably is for some sort of egress requirement, but having a garage door next to that with the structural element necessary to support the track is going to be really challenging. It's going to impede in the dining area and not be appropriate. You might consider a folding door instead, which would be just another series of man doors that just fold to the side.
I'm gonna say, I actually don't see the issue with the man door next to the garage door. I have seen this implemented before, and it's actually quite interesting. Now, on that note, though, a bifolding door also kind of solves all these same problems, and then you don't have to have a separation between them in that way. But I don't necessarily think that the garage door is enough of an issue for us to say you're not allowed to do that.
No, it's up to them to do whatever
Yes,
kind of
just
door they
sort of an
want.
option.
Just sort of
but
looking at it practically.
Two cents the
to have
bifolding
that
doors are-
door intersect the ceiling and then disappear and somehow.
might be
I
more
wouldn't want to
complicated than it's
solve
worth.
the detailing of that issue at all. It sounds impossible to me. There's all kinds of things that happen in ceilings, above drop ceilings, and to make them work around a door that's going to intersect that ceiling, and then how do you hold up the ceiling where the door, it's your idea, I think, is kind of a clever one, that you could have a folding door.
Actually, I have done this exact solution on projects. However, because this is quite small, like the folding doors that have an egress door as part of it. So you do need this for egress, but when you open, you actually get that entire width versus that single egress door is still sitting there, even when the
That's a
garage door
problem.
is open. In larger cases, this works, but this is such a small opening that I think an integrated folding door with the egress door as part of that would probably be a nicer long-term solution.
Thank you. Yeah.
But up to you how you guys want to take it.
Minshi, did you have any final thoughts on this?
No additional comments on the garage door thing, yeah. But yeah, I agree. There could be lots of refinements and details on the front elevations, and also like the brick, how will you, I would suggest to wrap around the bricks to the sushi ruku side instead of just on the front to be flat. And
You sure about that? I was thinking about it a lot when we're looking at the corner, because the immediate reaction is to bring their brick all the way back on the
Right.
side. But if you think about it from the sushi roku side, it's a pretty big impediment on them to have this very distinctly different material impacting their dining area.
Well, it
So I
doesn't
was
have to
pleased
go
to
all the
hear that
way
these-
in. Does it go in?
What they're showing is going in some 8 inches, the length of a brick. And I thought that was a very elegant solution, actually, lining it up with the sushi roku canopy.
What is the leftover? Is it just panda stucco?
They were gonna paint
Or-
it to match sushi roku's look so that they're not impacting their neighbor as much.
Let me see that.
And this whole thing is because they're removing that glazed door.
Right.
And one of the renderings caught that, I thought.
Yeah.
There is a rendering on the screen.
Yeah, there's a rendering on the screen. So I thought that was a better solution, Board Member Chen, just because
To
it's
take it to
better
the
for the
can-
neighbor.
To take it to the canopy.
Yeah,
Right.
but I just want to make sure that if you disagree, it's good to know because we can.
That's
the
what I
clip-
was,
I'm flexible on it.
that's what I was assuming. They
Yeah.
take it to the canopy.
Just in the rendering though, because in the notes it says paint to match and I don't know I don't recall the surface on Sushi Roku, but it kind of looks like a textured tile surface.
It's a wood slats.
Oh, on the back.
Oh, yes, it's a textured tile surface.
Yeah, so I understood it as that would continue to the edge of the brick, but I guess that's a clarification. Just on that elevation, it said finish to match or something like that.
So if that is the case, then on Sushi Ruko side, do we really want to show the brick edges showing, or it could be some kind of a
Yeah,
trim?
you're right. What's the detail there?
Yeah.
It says paint to match adjacent tenant on page A08.01.
She's got it up on the screen as well, A08.01. There you go.
That keynote 20.
Now, for what it's worth, I think this is sort of an interesting condition because it's the melts, part of the building that they're being thoughtful to their neighbor about. So I think that the solution they came up with is actually quite nice, that brick just wraps the edge, sort of keeping it simple, and that they're painting to match and sort of gift that rest of that space to Sushi Roku. So I don't have an issue with this at all. I think what they've provided as a solution, I think is appropriate and respectful.
I guess just a condition or however you want to state it is that it's not just a paint, but actually finish matching, if that's the intent from the rendering.
On the rendering, yes, but on the elevations, it says painted,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And again, I
Paint to
don't
what?
It's a
really,
fairly complicated looking finish on the wall.
Mhm.
and for what it's worth, I actually think it's less desirable in the rendering. I think having those two tiles clash up against each other, the tile to hitting the brick, I don't think would actually look as nice as sort of a stucco finish that's just sort of painted to be subservient to Sushi Roku. So my 2 cents on it is just paint is actually better. It provides a transition between the tiles that you wouldn't get otherwise. I think those two
Nice
tiles
Schluter.
hitting each other would look bad.
Well, some sort of a plaster finish that flushed with the brick, so you
Right.
didn't see the edge of the thin veneer. And
Correct.
either painted to match the tile or the gray up above of the melt would be best. But
Mhm.
I'm inclined to let them run with this however they see fit. This
Yeah.
is, they're already going the extra mile, in my opinion.
Mhm.
The basic design intent is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm much more eager to force our weight on the light fixtures than anything else, to be honest. So if we're going to push for something, let's do that.
Right.
To be honest, all these materials seem pretty good.
Yeah.
Sure, the wood could be lighter. Let's get rid of that little flex molding. Let's recommend spandrel glass, consider folding doors, but otherwise this is good.
Okay, do we feel like we're ready for someone to make a motion? And I would also say that there's the possibility of ad hocs as well as conditions of approval. So if we want to specify one for one and one for the other, that might be a good idea. Does someone want to make a motion here?
Let me try. I
Let's go
move that
for
we
it.
recommend approval of this project as presented with the following modifications. One, eliminate the flex molding around the arch openings. Two, use spandrel glass with a dark surface on the number 2 surface. And then do not use street lighting. Do not relocate the existing street lights into the dining area. Rather allow streetlights to be relocated such that there's a 7-foot clearance maintained.
Do you have anything you want to bring back for an ad hoc?
I don't think so. I'd
Okay.
much rather let staff run with this. And I think the whole notion of the shopping center lighting and stuff is something staff has heard us and they've heard us.
Beautiful.
So I don't think anything else needs to be put in a motion or anything.
I would just say a friendly amendment would be in the motion that we add the allowance for a adjustment of the wood plank to a
Oh,
slightly
I'm
lighter
sorry. I
color,
forgot
should they
that.
see
I
fit.
forgot that one.
So-
The last condition would be to change the color of the wood
Oh, to
plank.
actually change, okay.
To change it
Let's
to
do
match the
Let's
coloring
do
in the
that.
rendering. I think the board clearly wanted that.
Yeah,
So saying that match the color of this rendering right here is what we're looking for.
yeah.
Did you mention the door?
Garage
Folding
door, garage door bifolding.
I don't know what we can say
I
about
think
it.
you recommend.
We recommend a consideration of that door, and if it comes back to final approval with a bifolding door, no, I don't think anyone on the staff would have a
Sure.
issue with that.
So consider using folding
It
doors
stays
instead
if
of
it
overhead
changes.
garage doors.
Exactly. Okay,
But you need, yeah, that's the motion.
okay. Jody, can I ask you to do your
Yes.
best to read that back to us?
Yes, so we're talking about eliminating the flex molding on the arches, correct?
Yes.
And then was it eliminating the spandrel
Well,
I didn't catch that one.
Those arched openings should be built with spandrel glass rather than a film applied to regular glass. Spandrel glass is just a factory-made dark glass on one surface.
Okay, so we want spandrel glass that has the black is integral to the
glass,
material?
Yeah.
Okay. And then that we're not relocating the streetlights into the dining area. Potentially they would be near the curb, but we would want that at least 7-foot clearance.
Yes.
And then adjusting the, on the patio wall, adjusting the wood color to match the rendering. And then recommending changes to the garage door, that it could potentially be a bifold door.
I'm not sure we're saying recommending. I think we'd allow them to make a change.
If they see fit.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, those are, yeah, we're just whatever they want. No, absolutely. It's not a requirement.
Okay. All right, with that in mind, I second the motion. Can we call for a vote?
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, and everyone, for a time check, it is 10:17. I'm going to advise that we come back at 10:30, and we'll begin action item number 3 at that time. Thanks very much.
Separate operation. I have one of those.
All right, everyone, we're at 10:30 and we'd like to begin again. Okay, so we are on to action item number 3, public hearing. I'm gonna flip to the page here. Public hearing quasi judicial for 3,000 El Camino Real, also known as Palo Alto Square. Recommendation on applicant's request for approval of a major architectural review for facade changes and site improvements associated with conversion of a vacant theater use to an office use within building number 6. Staff recommends the architectural review take the following action. Recommend that city council approve the proposed facade and site modifications based on the findings of attachment B and conditions of approval in attachment C, while reserving a final determination on zoning compliance for the city council. All right, with that, we'd like to go over disclosures. I disclose I visited the site.
I disclose I visited the site as well.
Yeah, I'll disclose that I visited the site yesterday.
Yes, I visited this site.
I also visited the site yesterday. Thank you.
And I would just like to, in this moment, take a second to say that we received a plethora of public comment, and we did read through each and every one of your emails. So if you sent in an email to the city staff, they were all forwarded. We read a lot of them. We read all of them, and there were a lot. So I'm just putting that out there for people to know. All right, with that, let's go to the staff presentation, which I believe is by Claire.
Thank you, board members and Chair Rosenberg. Claire Raybold, Principal Planner. The project before you today is 3,000 El Camino Real, which is at Palo Alto Square, an architectural review application. The project is at the corner of Page Mill Road and El Camino Real. It's a fairly large site. The project in question is at the rear of the property in Building 6, as highlighted on this slide. The quick project overview. The project includes conversion of the former Cine Arts Theater to an office use. And then it has associated changes to the facade and site improvements, which include changes to add windows and doors to the building, adding 1,193 square feet of new second floor office, and new outdoor amenity space at the rear of the building for office users. So just summarizing the key considerations before you today. So what we are asking you to do is to consider the architecture review findings for approval. And considering the whether the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, we are asking in the recommendation that you reserve the determination on whether the use and other components of the project are consistent with the zoning for council's final determination. So just a couple other items I wanted to highlight. The project does include one tree removal at the rear of the property, Southern Magnolia. They are replacing that canopy with 3 proposed trees. I do want to note that in the staff report, there was, I had noted that they had to be native in the findings, but in looking back at the code, they have to be climate adaptive, and the proposed trees do meet that requirement, but they are not native. The project also would include a seismic upgrade. This is on our hazardous buildings list. So the changes to the windows and doors would require a seismic retrofit of the building. This would really be changes on the interior of the building to reinforce it. And the project would upgrade the building in compliance with Green Building Code accordingly for those changes. I do want to highlight there were, as Chair Rosenberg mentioned, there were numerous public comments that came in over the last week for the project. So key feedback from the public mainly discouraged allowing a conversion from theater to office use. They noted that additional office is not needed or expressed concern that an office use would remain vacant. There were a couple that expressed concern that the project had not been noticed properly. And so I do want to highlight that the project has been noticed in accordance with our code, which includes noticing to 600-foot radius, as well as noticing in the public paper. And with that, staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board recommend that City Council approve the proposed facade and site modifications based on the findings in Attachment B and the conditions of approval in Attachment C, while reserving a final determination on zoning compliance for the City Council. And with that, I'll turn it back to you. I know that the applicant is here today and does have a presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Claire. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness in your presentation today. If the applicant would like to approach the podium, or if they are on Zoom, that you have 10 minutes, please state and spell your name before you begin. Thanks very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Krista. Oh, sorry. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
That microphone is your friend. You're going to have to get right up to it.
Hello, I am on stage now. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us here. My name is Krista Olson, Krista Olson, Olson. I also have Abigail on Zoom. I think you can see her.
Can you see me?
If you'd like to just, spell your name, Abigail.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. ABIGAILHAMMETT.
And Abigail and I are both with HGA, the architects. And then I also have Claire with our landscape architect, SWA.
Hi, everyone. My name's Claire Adams, CLAIREADAMS, and I'm with SWA, the landscape architects on the project.
And if it's okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Thanks very much. You may begin.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having us here and for reviewing our project. Thank you for the staff planning for the document review. We're very excited about this project and bringing some vitality back into our lives and getting people out into the workspace. So here we have 3000 El Camino Real. Moving into an aerial view to show the 6 buildings of the developed site, and that we are going to be proposing changes to the vacant movie theater at the corner here, noted in the pink box. Along here, we have our site plan zooming into building number 6. There are 6 on the campus. There are multiple different stories. There is another single-story building and then a couple of high rises on the site. The main entrance is adjacent to building 5 and will remain the main entrance. And there are the only proposed changes to the building are adding windows and doors, but the architectural features will remain, and then adding a back garden patio area for the new space. Here is the existing views just to walk you through. And this is, again, where I said we were going to keep the remaining entry at the same access. And then we will be creating spaces within the existing structure of the exterior building to provide windows. So we'll be providing windows along this side. And then again, providing the windows, and then in the back is where we will be providing a new patio area. There are existing stairwells that go down that are for the exiting of the movie theater currently. So we will be filling those in so there will no longer be those dark areas. There are stairwells below the pedestrian level. And then on the west side, we will be providing new big windows that will allow light in to the office space and allow views out to the great lawn on the side here, and also so people to see activity going on and people coming back. Again, here is our entrance. We are proposing to keep the main entrance in the middle and replacing the two side doors with glazing that will match the existing glazing at the front there. So here is a rendering showing the proposed glazing on the east side here, looking west. The mullions will be in the same bronze, anodized bronze that are of the existing mullions now, and actually keeps with the Palo Alto architecture of the mid-modern century of that time. You can see it throughout Palo Alto. And then here we are at the back of the building where we have provided more glazing, since there are no openings currently, for a back patio. And I'll let SWA take a time from here.
All right, jumping in here. I wanted to start out by zooming out to the whole site context. Just to reiterate, this project is part of a larger office campus consisting of 6 buildings, and the landscape design for this middle consists of the courtyard on the south side of Building 6. Now taking a closer look at the patio space, the dimensions are about 90 by 25 feet. And it's designed as an accessory outdoor space for the building. And we plan to maintain and protect most of the existing trees on site while adding new hardscape, planting areas, furniture, and a sense of enclosure. For the hardscaped areas, we're using a mix of concrete paving, decorative concrete tile, and also adding some synthetic turf in one of the lounge seating areas. We're also providing a mixture of built-in custom furniture and movable furniture throughout the lounge areas. The patio is enclosed with a 6-foot redwood fence that goes around the whole patio and has 2 egress gates on either side of the patio close to the building. I also want to point out the feature breeze block wall that's centered on the long side of the fence, just to provide sort of backdrop for the main flexible space on the patio. And as I mentioned before, regarding the existing trees, we are preserving most of them, except with the exception of one tree that's a southern magnolia that's sort of located inside the patio space. And according to the arborist report, this particular tree wasn't in good health. And we believe that removing it will improve the functionality of the patio space and also allow more natural light into the courtyard and into the building. There are several trees outside of the property line that we'll be protecting with fencing during construction. And there's 2 that land sort of inside the patio space, which will also be fenced and protected during construction. And regarding the fence that sort of goes close to those existing trees, the fence will have pile footings that'll be placed on site with the recommendations from the arborist to avoid any root damage. To make up for the 1 tree removal, we'll be adding 3 additional trees, canopy trees, along with, I believe, 8 hedge plants and plenty of understory planting to the project. Just to finish off, providing some material images that we plan on using for the project. On the left side, showing our understory planting selections, and our tree selections will be using Swan Hill olives and Grecian laurels. And all of these trees are low water usage and drought tolerant. In the middle, you can see our movable furniture selections, and then towards the right of the page, our hardscape selections. We'll be using cast in place concrete and some decorative concrete tile. And then towards the top, you can see an example of what the redwood fence might look like. And we do have some bollard lighting placed within the planting areas, but they're relatively small and pointing downwards. And with that, I'll hand it back to HG.
Keeping with the finished palette, back to the building, we will be keeping the existing concrete walls and columns and keeping the paint. We will be adding a mechanical screen to the, I'm sorry, we'll be replacing the existing mechanical screen with a new mechanical screen, which is slightly larger, but it will be perforated metal and then painted the same color as the building. So the image on the left is what the material looks like, and then the color is the paint to the right of that. We will be providing new high-performance glazing in the areas of where we are putting in the glazing. Moving to the interior, we are proposing that this become an office space to bring people in and out. With that, we would have to include additional mechanical, and since that's why, that is why we are increasing the mechanical screen slightly in width, and we have increased the height to 6 feet, but it is still within the required code heights. As mentioned, we are increasing the square footage slightly on the mezzanine level to make it more usable, and that way we can provide 2 staircases. Currently, one of the staircases is more of a, it's to go up to what was the projector room, so it's not accessible and doesn't meet code, so adding additional staircase. And then a section, just so you can get a feel, we have the mechanical screen on the top, and then it shows you the double-heighted space inside. So here we get to the exciting architectural features of the building. This is showing the west side, which would looks out onto the Great Lawn, looking into the office space, providing the double-heighted windows, providing more light, being able to see out, see in, versus with the big solid panels, the building is more turning its back on you. Now we're saying, hey, we're inviting you in. Let's communicate to each other. And then you can see the fence for the new common area for the building on the right side on the back. Here we go to the front of the building. So we are proposing to add some clear story at the top above the doors to get some light to come in. And then, as I mentioned before, replacing the 2 side doors with filled-in glazing that will match the existing and keeping the main entry where it is. Again, the mechanical screen, it has become longer. We're also trying to make it a little more symmetrical on top of the building, even though you won't really see it. Just trying to make it a little more pleasing to the eye there. And then here we are on the east elevation where we'll be putting in slivers of glazing, which are about, I think, 4 feet wide. I'm not sure, Abigail, if you can confirm that, or 5 feet or so, in slivers along, and that's where the pedestrian walkway is.
Sorry, they're 6 feet wide.
6 feet wide, sorry. Okay, sorry. And then here we are on the back of it where we've added, oh, that's what the beef is. Where we've added glazing again to just bring life inside and outside. And here we have the final renderings where you can see the large glazing looking out onto the common space, really bringing the 2 together and having them talk to each other. Whereas before, the vacant building really felt like it was turning its back on the people.
Great.
So,
Thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. All right, Veronica, at this time, how many public speaker cards do we have?
I have 1 speaker card. There's 4 people on Zoom,
Okay.
but no raised hands yet.
Okay. Could the people on Zoom kindly raise your hand at this time if you wish to be speaking as part of the public comment? How many raised hands do we see?
No raised hands, so just 1 speaker card from Herb Borak.
Okay, so if there's just 1 speaker, we'd love to invite them up to say their piece. You'll have 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Good morning. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Kindly
All right.
state and spell your name for the
Yes,
board.
Herb Borak, Herb, B as in boy, Orock. I submitted my comments in an email letter to you. I only got 1 bounce back that on the council, which was copied on it, the one to Tanaka for some reason couldn't be delivered. I believe you should continue this item because environmental law requires you to have a complete environmental document before you in order for you to make a recommendation, even though your purview is only one piece of the project. As I point out in my letter, the approved PC zones for this project include as required a development plan that's adopted as part of the ordinance. And that development plan includes as part of it a land use plan that shows the uses on a diagram that include a theater. Therefore, the complete project would include amending the PC zone to change that land use plan that is part of the development plan. Those are incorporated in the ordinance, as you can see on packet page 57, which is ordinance 2533 in section 2, which says that the diagrams attached here to entitled development plan are incorporated herein by reference. And similarly, on packet page 60, bottom of page 60, I believe it is, or is it top of 61? I guess top of 61. They're incorporated here on according to Palo Alto Municipal Code. The section numbers are different than those in my letter because of a reorganization of the zoning code, that the PC zone was once in chapter 18.68 and now it's in 18.38. Therefore, since the development plan that includes the land use plan, which shows the theaters, is part of the ordinance, the part that's under your purview may be considered a minor thing, but it cannot be separated from the rest of the project. The environmental review requires environmental review of the entire project rather than a review for each separate piece, each discretionary approval. And it's for that reason that I believe you should continue this until you have a proper environmental document before you for the entire project that would include amending that portion of the plan community zone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public speakers?
No, just the one.
Perfect. Okay, at this time, we will close this item for public comment, and we will turn it over to the ARB to ask questions of staff or the applicant.
I have two questions for staff, please. Could you clarify that a sign on the site is not a requirement for proper notification? I heard you say in your report that the project was properly notified because it had been placed in newspapers.
A sign on the site is not required for minor architectural review applications. And this project is technically, so the way the code works under 1838, it says that you can do a PC amendment, or if something is minor enough, it can be processed as minor architecture review. The applicant is arguing that this is a minor architecture review application. The city has stated that if we are going to process an application, we were going to move it to the board, which is within our purview if we feel that it requires a public hearing. The city also has the discretion to defer the final decision to council under the code from the director to the council, which we felt was appropriate in this circumstance.
I'm sorry, Claire, I'm just driving to the fact that I did not see a notification sign
and
on
my
the site.
point is that it's not required. Yeah.
And the staff's opinion is that that is not required.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want that for the record so everybody can hear it. Secondly, could you clarify for me, please? The Architecture Review Board is required to make 6 findings in order to recommend approval. And that includes the first finding, which would require us to find that it's in compliance with the general plan or applicable portions of the general plan, comprehensive plan. And you've listed in here a series of elements of the comprehensive plan that you believe are applicable to this project. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we were to find even one of those, if we can't make even one of those findings, then we cannot recommend approval. Is that the plain
Correct.
language of the code?
It-
The comprehensive plan is a broad brush document, and so no project could adhere to all of the different policies and programs that are in the comprehensive plan. So our analysis is usually that on balance, a project conforms with the comprehensive plan. Now, zoning would be different, that you do need to adhere to all zoning requirements.
Absolutely. I'm just saying that in the staff report, there's a number of items in the comprehensive plan that are referenced and some notations and information is given. I assume that's the case because you think those are relevant portions of the comprehensive plan to this project.
Correct.
Okay, so if we could not find that that's the case, that it complies with those things, then we would not be able to make the finding according to the statute with the plain language of the law. So I just want to get a sense that that's
I
actually
think
how it
that
should
you
be
could
read.
choose to do that, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Okay, that's all. No other questions.
On that note, actually, I'd like a little clarification as where the zoning stands right now for this property. Is it that it's in an application to adjust the zoning to change the space to office use? Is it the zone currently allows office use? Could you please clarify that a little bit?
It's the applicant's position that a zoning amendment is not required and that they can submit an architectural review application and that they are consistent with the zoning. So
based on what?
They are stating that they are consistent with the zoning because the zoning allows for a mix of land uses, of which office is included. It does not specify a specific mix that has to be achieved on the site. And there is additional language with respect to net leasable floor area that's detailed in the staff report that they feel that they are compliant with.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I am sure we have more questions. Give us a second. Board Member Chen?
Yes, I do have questions. If you want to go first.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. Actually, I have one more question for the staff. So on the packet page 45, on top of the page, it is said it is unclear, however, whether the buildings comply with the requirements for distribution of square footage between the ground and second floor. So could you please clarify which code sections we could look into to find out, like, because for this project, they do added square footage on the second floor.
Yeah, so it's in the packet is the PC zoning for the site. So what it specifies is that, I'll find the exact language, hold on one second.
And if when you do locate it, could you kindly announce the packet page as well?
Sorry.
On page 44, right?
Oh,
44 and 45.
They might be looking at something different, so I want to make sure we're all on literally the same page.
So it states the 1- and 2-story buildings.
Which page are you on, Claire? Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, packet page 61.
61, thank you.
Yep. It states that item number 3 under B, improvements. The 1- and 2-story buildings, which includes 4 of the 6 buildings on the property, shall not exceed a total of 85,000 square feet of net rentable floor area, with 65,000 square feet to be on the ground floor. So they are providing, I believe it was roughly 67,000 square feet in total. So they are under the 85,000 total. And they have, trying to remember how much was on the ground floor. But it was under the 65,000.
Board Member Adcock is pointing us to page 44. Is it the
Bottom left of
paragraph?
page 44.
And it says here 45,865 square feet on the first floor.
Page 45 or 44. And page 45, packet
44.
page 44 has the actual square footages. So they have 45,000 on roughly on the ground floor and 22,000 on the second floor.
I believe that's the existing, and with the new proposal, it's,
Yeah,
correct me
that's
if I'm wrong,
with-
45,865 on the
Yeah,
first
sorry.
floor and 23,234 on the second
Mhm.
floor. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Can I ask for further clarification for understanding on this? If I go back to page 61, where it says 1 and 2 stories shall not exceed total of 85. And I can construe that it also means that the first floor cannot exceed 65, right? If I kind of split that sentence up. It doesn't say that the second floor cannot exceed 20,000 by that, in that same sentence, which they are exceeding here. And I guess that's the parsing of words, right? And whether-
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I continue ask some questions? So,
Okay. I have to say these large packet sizes are making reaching the microphones a little bit more difficult than usual. So I'll try and remind everyone when they're close enough or not.
so I want to start with the elevation design. So on the west elevations, we saw that beautiful large tall 2-story tall glazings, but there's no trees outside. Or do you have any thoughts on the shading devices?
And for the applicant, you can feel free to sort of sit in that front row. You might need to stand up and sit down a couple of times as we're talking to you, so feel free.
You're asking about you're asking about the west elevation.
The shading devices, the shading consideration.
So we're not adding any additional trees on that side. The only trees we're adding are on the south side. And I believe it's because we're not able to fit them on the sidewalk on the
Right,
west
but
side.
for the building design, then is there any additional architectural features that can provide to reduce glare inside?
Well, inside we would have Meco shade, we would have some type of shading devices, window shades to use. At this time, we haven't proposed anything to be added to the exterior of the building since we're trying to keep with the architectural features that are original there.
Okay, thanks. And for the south elevation, I saw it's a symmetrical building, but for the south elevation, it seems like it's not symmetrical with the two green walls. One is at the end and the other is more towards the center.
And so that would have to do with what could be proposed on the inside. On the right-hand side of that elevation, I guess I could share my screen, where you have the blank wall still remaining is the possibility of where the restrooms could be. So that is the reason why we are trying to look at how the inside could possibly be used and where we want that light
Right,
coming
so
in.
for the south elevation, then you have the doors open to the backyard that is at the center, and then the solid wall with the green screens that is one next to the door and the other at the corner. I want to know the design intent of it, and then which means the stair next to the door will be exposed, like you can see through the stairs inside. Do you have any detailed thoughts about the stair design in this case?
On the interior?
Uh-huh.
At this time, we do not have the stair design. We just know how many runs it needs to have.
And do you have any interior design plans for an elevator?
At this time, no, we do not need one per code. We are meeting the mezzanine code requirements, so an elevator is not required, and we will provide the same features on the first floor. Any features that are on the second floor would definitely be provided on the first floor, and therefore we're not required to provide an elevator.
And for the landscape design, and I noticed you use the turf that is not the real grass. Could you please explain that why?
Yes, so we wanted to keep our material selection low water usage. So all of the understory planting that we're using is low water usage and drought tolerant, and lawn, or traditional real lawn, is a little bit too high water usage. So we opted out for synthetic turf.
Okay, and for the breeze block wall, the breeze block, could you please tell the scale of it, like how tall each block it is and how you will use it in your case?
So the breeze block feature wall, the base will be CMU blocks. I believe they're 6-inch in height, and then the breeze blocks will be on the upper portion of the wall. I believe they're around 4 inches in height, and it'll just provide some views toward the outside, but the CMU base, still provides protection.
So if we see the sheet L1.02, there is the material, the color board to show the material breeze block wall. I just want to understand, it's L1.02, the materials.
Sorry, one moment.
It's L sheet, L1.02.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. If you zoom out, to see the.
Here we go. Yes, so
blocks.
they're made out of terracotta clay tiles, and you can sort of see through them. They're not solid.
So could you please give a general dimension on, like, since you have the single block on the lower left corner, how tall it is and how will you apply to this wall you designed?
I don't have the exact dimension on hand. I believe they're 4 by 6 inch blocks around that dimension, and then they'll be stacked and mortar set on top of the CMU wall.
Okay.
This is Abigail from HGA. I think it may also be helpful to look at the northwest rendering, because that shows the breeze block wall rendered.
Oh, in the presentation.
Yeah, in the presentation, it is sheet 10 in the presentation. Oh, actually, my pages
There we go.
than yours. There it is.
Looking at the elevation, we have the CMU at the bottom. Sorry. We have the CMU at the bottom, creating more of a foundation for the wall, and then you'll have the
clay, breeze blocks on top.
Okay, and like you said, it has visibility through it, so we're not just putting another blank wall, we're creating that connection between the two spaces.
I think the question is more in regards to, you notice how there's some horizontal banding created by the coursing, right?
Oh, okay.
Is that accurate? Is it going to be stacked 5 high or is it going to be stacked 12 high? That's why we're trying to figure out, like, because if there's a bunch of stripes across there, it will have a very different look. So if I can
and also on sheet L2.01, you have the section there. I assume you're talking about the upper portion to be the breeze block.
Yes, let me actually pull up the
detail. This part.
Or,
yeah, and there's some discrepancy between the rendering that shows all of it being breeze block and some of the sections and some of the other images that we just saw where it shows a bit more CMU and sort of a breeze block infill panel. So we're trying to get some clarification of what's actually the design intent here.
Let me just pull up the elevation. Okay, here's the most current design. So I think the rendering that was just shown previously had a little bit of an outdated.
Yeah, I think. So this section of wall is predominantly CMU, and there's only a small portion that is breeze block that you can actually see through.
Yes.
That is kind of like the 2 layers?
Yeah, so it'll be 2 layers of breeze block stacked on top of each other. And the total height is 7 feet. So it's primarily solid with a small portion of breeze block.
And 7 feet, yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think that's my question for now.
I have a few questions, if I may go next. Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I have some questions regarding the glazing. Well, first is, I understand this building to be concrete. Is it precast panels, and are you intending to like remove certain panels? Is that how you're getting to windows, like for instance, on the east and west sides? Like you're basically taking out big chunks and putting glazing.
And
Are
that-
those discrete precast panels?
I'm not completely sure. I'm not sure if Abigail, you know, but a part of putting the glazing in would also spark doing some structural seismic upgrades. So by putting the glazing, it is enabling us to do a better seismic upgrade. Oh, can you help?
Hi, good morning. My name is Jared Willis, Jared Willis. I'm a director of construction with Hudson Pacific and in charge of this project. So yes, those are precast concrete, which we would largely saw cut out and then replace with a structural system on the inside to resupport that shear activity of those walls, and then replace the glazing in place.
So are these intended to be like curtain wall? Because these are like 20 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, these are like an exterior kind of curtain wall type, matching the similar to the existing glazing.
Okay. And is the mullion pattern shown actual intention, like about 12 feet or so tall glazing up top and about 8 feet down on the lower sections? Like for instance, if I lost where my finger was on the right page.
Would you mind scrolling down to the next elevation page?
Yeah, can we go to an elevation page?
There we go.
So the mullion lines you're asking about on this side are lining up with the new doors that will be added to the backside and the doors on the front side. And then the other mullions will try and mimic what is existing on that front for when you.
The horizontal mullion?
Here for like the spacing of the vertical mullions.
So actually, if you go to the page before this, there's a horizontal mullion that is roughly 8 feet maybe
So that
from the floor.
horizontal mullion is looping back around to the existing entry doors. There we go.
Yeah, and actually, if you go back to the one you were just at, I think there's a mullion in line there as well. When I look at the pictures, there's a horizontal mullion that's missing on this elevation. I
On
think
this
that's what, over on the right, yeah.
But
mhm.
those are existing windows.
Correct, but I think the existing picture
Oh, you
shows
mean
a
our
horizontal
renderings
mullion
missing?
on it. Is that what you're trying to match? I guess is my question.
Yes.
Okay. And then glazing wise, I think I saw in your material that it's like, clear glazing. I think existing is like kind of a bronze
Yeah,
tinted.
has a bronze
In
tint.
all of the other, like these large openings that you're doing, are you intending to do bronze tinted as well, or like clear glazing?
No, we would keep with the bronze anodized mullion, and then we would propose a more clear low E glass glazing, high performance that will meet Title 24. The bronze glazing was of that era, and it is a single pane glazing. And so we'll be replacing that with dual pane. And to get the bronze tint, it's very difficult these days. And I would not recommend it because it makes it very dark inside.
Right.
And so we would like to have the clear, so you have that transparency between the inside and outside.
Yeah. So more
And
like
there's-
a
and there's
greenish
no-
tint solar bands 90 kind of glass is what you're intending? Like it'll be a greenish tint if it's high performance glass? Or are you intending like, low E?
Low E.
low iron,
Low iron, it wouldn't be clear like Apple. I have to be very clear about that. It will have, we're not putting a shine on it, but just the way the glass reacts this day with the glass, that kind of like the earlier project, it will have a little bit of reflectivity depending on the time of the day, but it is a clear glass. So depending on how the light hits it at certain times of the day.
Okay. But if it's, yes, what we normally use now is high performance glazing, they'll have a greenish tint versus the bronze. So like in this elevation that we're looking at here, the right little bit will be bronze glazing versus the left will be more greenish tinted.
And they're not exactly in the same plane.
Correct.
So I think that works from a design aspect.
Yeah, these are very large panes of glass, so I assume that's in your construction budget. Other than saw cutting these very large panels. I think, yeah, that was my question regarding glazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, sure.
I had a question about the zoning still. Are we done with questions or?
No, I think let's get through some more of the architectural questions. We can circle back to zoning because that is a big ticket item. But so
Yeah,
David, do you have
yeah.
any questions
Yeah,
for the
good-
applicant or
good
staff?
thought. So outside on the west side, I guess there are stairs that lead to a cellar area under the floor. There are no cellar plans that I could see.
So
Unless I missed them.
those back stairs on the back side
Yeah.
are actually from the theater. So the theater, you walk in at level and then it slopes down. And then there's egress doors at the bottom of that slope, and that's what those are. And so they're actually dwellings. So
Uh-huh.
you then would exit coming out. So we're proposing to remove or fill in those stairwells that go down, and then it would just become one level area. So you're getting rid of those areas that are not always the safest spaces in open public areas.
David, you're leading right into my questions. So
I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
But
do you want to
said
continue?
for me to talk. So.
No, it's all for you.
So the mechanical system, I mean, I see some holes in the roof.
So there would have to be a mechanical upgrade done, hence one of the reasons why we have expanded the mechanical screen on top to accommodate additional mechanical equipment, because that going from a theater where it's just one main space and a couple little ones, we're going to be going to have conference rooms, offices, and open space. So we are going to require probably a larger mechanical.
So it's going to come later, basically, is what you're saying?
Yes, when the interiors are done.
But you didn't kind of indicate a drop ceiling or so far that I could see that.
We haven't gotten that far for the interiors yet.
Okay.
And I think we would probably keep it open
Uh-huh.
and not have a drop ceiling to try and keep that height. That is something, a specialty of this space that people are looking for in today's world. They don't want just your standard offices. If we're going to go into the office, they want something special. And this space provides that with the double heighted ceilings.
So then there'd be a ducting.
You would have your exposed ducts for HVAC.
So the location and the mechanicals are kind of still up in the air.
The mechanical equipment will be on the roof like it is currently.
Uh-huh. But is that a fixed location where you're showing the mechanicals, or might it move?
I think we would keep it where it is. We wouldn't want to move it to another location.
Uh-huh. In terms of cutting the wall, et cetera, from the outside in order to make, when you cut column to column line, that's probably easier to do and make it really work. Can you do it in a vertical panel the way you are doing it on the south side?
I'm sure you can. We can do anything these days.
I think we haven't fully explored the exact, I mean, at this planning stage, we haven't fully explored the exact structural and demo requirements. But yeah, we would cut those into smaller size. That's the southern facing elevation to reduce the heat gain on that side. And you're looking out the parking lot, which is not as nice as looking out to the great lawn or the back area as well. So we have made some choices about why those windows are smaller. We still want to bring light into the offices and into the space that way. But they're smaller for a reason.
I think that's it for me.
Can I ask a follow-up question about glazing, looking at the plan? So you'll have, like on the east side, I think, east or south, whichever way you orient this, you'll have the second level as well. And the elevation we were looking at earlier, I think, the ones with the skinnier windows. Will that have the floor line visible through, or will it have spandrel when you have the second floor line somewhere halfway up the glazing?
Good question.
I mean, the mezzanine level in this picture here is to the right on the bottom image, on the bottom right. So that's hidden along that sort of southern elevation.
Right.
So it's not intended to extend out past that line, that last shear panel.
Could you
In
flip
the
to one of
other
the other
elevation
ones?
it is. If I go to plan on G 2.01, like this side.
On the parking lot side, you would see it sort of cut horizontally across those windows, yes.
Okay, so the floor line will just be visible through the edge.
I think we would have to have something to obscure that, yes.
Thank you. On that same vein, do you mind jumping to the front elevation very quickly? So this one gets hidden by this striation line here, and then you're adding in these windows to allow some light in, correct?
To the upper. Okay.
Okay, so I've got a couple comments here, if my board members don't mind me diving in. Number one was absolutely how that spandrel glass or structure is going to be treated along that entire facade with the mezzanine. Number two is sort of in regards to on the mezzanine plan on A2.02, you have no interiors shown. The reason I'm asking this is because, yeah, if you flip over there, perfect, thank you. And our presentation actually has the grid lines on, which your presentation does not. It looks like there's a potential clear divisions for individual office spaces. Now, if that's something that would be determined by the, filling out of the interiors, the two corner pockets above on the same facade as the entryway. There we go. So flip up to the mezzanine level, please. Beautiful. So if you stay still, I can highlight this, right? So let's assume that maybe somebody does come and decides to fill all that out. This space would have no windows and this space would have no windows. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if this is going to be filled out with individual offices, you would need some sort of ventilation, and that would in turn affect this facade or of these facades, right? Do you have any understanding of what the intent of this interior upper mezzanine will be? Please.
Yes, we would have offices on the upper mezzanine area. I would imagine that the spaces you identified might be more support spaces like copy rooms, not necessarily occupiable, but that's not yet determined.
Okay, and then again, along this facade here, there would need to be some sort of hallway in front, so those offices could get skinny, but that's not necessarily what we're here to review, but you would maintain it so that every office has a window?
I don't know the final layout of those offices, so I can't promise that every single one has a window.
Understood. I guess here's my concern is that we're looking at an exterior of a building that's doing some pretty dramatic changes to windows, and we don't know what the inside is going to look like. So, and they are related. Yeah. So we're wondering how much of this has been thought through. And if the answer is we're just not there yet, that's a fair answer. But understand that, our job is to either approve or deny based on what we're shown. And if the information's not necessarily clear or there, then that makes it a little more difficult. Going back to the ground floor level. So you guys are going to be finishing out that floor at a solid flat level, same as the entryway. Do you mind pointing out on the grid lines, and thank you for keeping this one up, where that transition will begin? So is it starting at the R grid line? Is it, because I believe that from my memory, last time I was at Cine Arts, which has been a minute, there's the entry lobby, but I don't know exactly where that floor starts to fall and how deep it gets.
It's roughly about the R line. There are existing restrooms, one on each side, and after you get past that front mezzanine. So it's roughly about there. I'm not exact, but it's roughly about there.
And then it slopes down in the direction of the arrow I just drew.
Correct.
And then we have sort of the staircases here and here.
Yes.
Okay, and do you know the depth of that and how much you'll need to fill in? And if you jump to the sections, we can take a look at that as well, because that is something that I noticed was not in the sections. You're not showing this subfloor and what's being filled in. And I think that's sort of an important element to note.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the exact amount of fill identified here.
I'm going to talk while you're looking for it. Because part of the issue is that the sections really show a pretty basic section. And what I mean by that is that they're not really showing the foundations or any of those items. Now, one thing I will say is that I'm very pleased to see that this was, sort of a remodel. And I think that you guys are doing a good thing with the retrofitting, but I would like to make sure that we fully understand what's happening with that floor raising.
Yeah, I think given that the stage we're at for exterior planning review, we had not fit out those details for this application.
Sure. Okay. Okay. And then again, no elevator. That's my last question. Okay. And then I think I have one more clarification question, pretty minor. So my understanding is that all of the glazing around the three sides is going to be new. The glazing on the front facade, if you don't mind jumping back to that drawing, I'm trying to just make sure I fully understand where the bronze glazing will remain versus where the new glazing will come in. So
on
this is going to be bronze. This is going to all be bronze. This is going to be bronze. So what are you doing with these little infill panels?
We're going to try and match them.
Oh, good luck to you.
But
That's good.
That's going to be a challenge.
And it's not worth keeping the
The doors.
The doors ended up becoming conference spaces in the front. So we want people to enter directly into the conference spaces.
Okay. Is there any potential landscaping or anything like that that maybe would be more conducive to just blocking them off?
I mean, right now they're just concrete in front of those doors. And we're not proposing any changes to the exterior concrete in that area.
All right. And then one more final question. Is there any sort of canopy existing above the entryway?
No, there are some members that jut out, but we might have this.
Is there any proposal for a canopy above the entryway?
No, I mean, you can see here in this image how they sort of jut up. There's not a.
I'm sort of asking leading questions, so I apologize. I kind of know the answers already, but just wanted to confirm some of this as well. So basically, but also, if you don't mind staying at this photo, so all of this will remain that bronze glass. Correct. This up and over is existing to remain. All of this center one is going to remain bronze glass, and then the sort of secondary one. But the doors will be new, and you're going to try and match. And then all of the rest of the glass you're going to have as a different color and texture.
And so the Clerk story is stepped back on this facade, so it's not in plane with.
So you don't really see it at the same time, except for when you're standing over here in this parking lot looking back at it, or in the
right now,
or in the park. All right, understood. Thank you for the clarification. That's all my
About
questions.
the canopy, though, I think given the extent of renovation you're doing, I think you will be required to have a canopy over entrance doors. I don't remember if it's regular building code or Cal Green. So I assume you'll include a canopy for cover over front entrances.
You're asking us to include a canopy?
I think building code will require you to, not us in particular. But yeah, right?
We'll have to look at that.
Yeah, it hasn't come up as part of our initial review as a requirement.
Is there anything else on the architectural elements that we have questions about? Because I do believe we want to get back to the zoning questions and fully understanding that. Any other? Oh, I have one more actually. Will you be power washing this building or will you be painting?
We intend to keep the original concrete, so we would have to clean it in some way to remove the ivy.
Yes.
So yes, some sort of power washing, but not intending to paint the existing concrete.
Okay, because that was part of my ivy leaves a footprint, right?
Yes.
And so
yeah, again, at this stage, we haven't explored all the details, but yes, we'd have to clean it in some fashion to restore it back to the original concrete look.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, one more question. So on the packet, it says you will remove 14 short-term bicycle parkings. Could you please show on the site plan where it is?
The bicycle parking that we are.
Yeah, it is to remove 14 total short-term bicycle parking space.
We do have.
There is a short-term parking in the sort of tree grove on the south side, which I think would need to be removed for the construction. But I don't think we are intending to delete bike parking on the site.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
But there is an existing sort of bike rack parking structure back there that we would need to move.
Yeah, I had noted in the staff report, sorry, that they were removing it. It was unclear, but in looking further at it, I realized that it's actually on the neighboring property and it's proposed to remain.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Great question. And then I have one more question about the interiors, and I believe we'll circle back to zoning unless someone else has something. Do you have any pathing or progress for where the trash will be? Or is that still part of the interiors that you've not yet gotten to?
So the individual trash, the offices, no, we don't have that. There is a large trash enclosure on the south side next to the existing parking structure. Yeah, there you go. So circle in pink there.
But
that
nothing
is serving the entire property.
Okay, but nothing on site that you have in terms of a collection before it goes there. I apologize.
We would just have sort of standard office millwork trash cans.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Peter, you want to get into your zoning questions for staff?
Yes. So to
You guys
staff,
can probably take a seat for a minute. Thank you.
Finding number one also relates to the zoning code. And we look to you to tell us what the zoning code is on any given project. That's not our purview to interpret the code. In this case, the zoning code is a PC zone that was established by city council in 1969, specific to this property. And what I'm hearing you say is that you're interpreting the PC zone to be as defined in the PC text, the ordinance that was written in 1969, not the specific buildings and use of the buildings that's on the site right now. It's being defined, you've chosen to define it by the text. Is that correct?
It's not we feel that it's the development plan is the buildings, and the zoning ordinance itself, the PC language, defines the uses that are allowed on the site.
So that's why this would be coming to us as an architecture review, because we're modifying the physical buildings, which are defined not by the text of the ordinance, but rather by the existing buildings.
Yes.
Okay, because that ties into, I just looked up 4075 El Camino Way is a project currently under review, which is a PC zone. It's a housing development of some kind, or they want to physically change it. And what you've been telling us on that project is the PC zone is defined by what's there right now. And any change, you've said this to us several times in our hearings, any change whatsoever from what's there now is what we're defining this as.
Correct.
I just want to be clear then that what we're doing here is defining the use, not by what's there, but by what's written in that statute from 1969. This is the crux of the matter coming up in the future.
So
I'm trying to get
all
clear
of our PCs have permitted and conditional uses is usually how we would do it. And we know that over time, buildings are the uses inside of the structure are going to change over time. And so to the best of our abilities, we write the PC in such a way that we do allow for changes of uses.
But am I incorrect in saying that you've told us specifically on PC projects, any change from what's there now, any change from the physical existence is a change to the PC code?
The code allows for minor changes to a PC through the staff level architecture review process. So if someone needed to add a door or, add some mechanical equipment, things of that nature, we would do that through the architecture review process. And that's what we're doing here. These are basically, window and door changes.
But the one down on 4075 El Camino Way is a housing development, and they want to add additional apartments. So that's, I think, properly said to be a modification to the existing PC ordinance.
Correct,
And that's why it's
because
coming to us as an approval.
their PC specified how many units they could have on their property, and they are exceeding that now.
And if they wanted to change the use, if they had wanted.
Also on the 4075, you're talking about the envelope of the building is getting larger. And so that's the other reason that we need the PC change.
Right. So I think that's the correct interpretation, what you're doing there. But if they wanted to change the use of that as well, so as they wanted to add a coffee shop there, would that be allowed? Or does that have to go back to council for modifying the PC? That's certainly not something the architecture board would change.
We'd have to look at that ordinance and see what the permitted uses are.
I think that is a fundamental question that what we're asking council ultimately, because in that case, the ordinance specified this is for a senior use, period.
Right.
And it didn't specify that other mixes of uses could be allowed or not changing the mix of uses. In this case, there is a list of permitted uses and conditionally permitted uses for the site.
Right.
And so the fundamental question for council is this change in the use allowed if you're changing the mix of uses on the site? And I think that there were a couple other interpretations that we want them to make as well, related to net leasable floor area and whatnot. But
yeah, so that circles to my fundamental question of basically saying we don't fully know what the zoning is applicable to this project. We're waiting for council to give us direction which zoning applies. So how are we able to make a finding that it's compliant with that zoning when the zoning's not defined?
And I think that's why we phrased the recommendation is that we want you to make a recommendation with the caveat that that recommendation is ultimately leaving the decision, like if council feels that the project is consistent with the zoning, they would make a decision to approve the project. If they fundamentally feel that it is not consistent with the zoning, then they would recommend denial, or they would deny the
Yeah,
project.
so to my colleagues, what they're asking us to do is ignore finding number one in this case.
It's like putting the cart in front of the horse. a
Okay,
little
well,
bit.
thanks. You answered.
But yeah.
I think that's the crux of the matter. So thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions for staff?
Follow-up
or the-
question, yeah,
Sorry, before we jump in, do you have a question for staff or the applicant?
applicant.
Applicant.
Looking at the south side and where you're going to create windows that are partial in the infill bays. And so I asked the question, what happens when you cut it? But the other aspect to this is that at present, I think the whole surface is covered with ivy, so we're not really looking at what's really there. Looking more detailed at the images of this, though, are you going to repeat the vertical divisions in the way in which you treat that surface? What's going to happen is this, how are you treating the surfaces of the panels that you're cutting? I mean, how are they designed? What aspect of design is going to be what's left?
So again, we're leaving the existing concrete panels.
Which are ribbed, I think, vertically ribbed.
They match what, I mean, you can see, not all of it's, I think there are portions of it and sort of a span application that are ribbed, but the majority is sort of a flat concrete.
Those panels are all flat concrete?
Well, if you go back to that image, over to share. If you can
Actually,
zoom
yeah, it's
to
hard to
right
know
here.
because the ivy.
They look here, look to the side.
So I think, yeah, so as I mentioned, there is a spandrel sort of application that's top above the windows there. But if you look to the far right, you see more of a flat concrete panel.
Okay, so the only ribbed sections are really between the top parapet, whatever, and the framing of the kind of vertical, how do you describe those column elements of some sort?
That's good.
Here's another, this is.
So everything below that is a flush surface on the infill panel?
Yeah, if you look at this where the ivy has sort of died over time, you can see
Yeah.
it's a relatively flat surface behind that ivy.
Relatively.
It's pockmarked, it's natural cement. I mean, it's
There's no ribbing in there whatsoever?
I don't believe, no.
Oh, okay, then.
You can see that, and again, that spandrel application at the very top, that ribbing.
Yes, you see it, it's accentuated in those areas. I can see that.
But just not on the lower portions.
Okay, you clarified that for me. Thank you.
Okay, to my colleagues, I think we're going to close this portion for the questions to the applicant and the staff, and let's have a discussion amongst ourselves and come to a determination here. If it's all right, I would like to start us off. I have some thoughts that, number one, I really appreciate the concept that this would be a remodel, right? That this is a pretty notable not historic, but it's a pretty notable building in this community and that really should be preserved and maintained. And I think the intent of the exterior design is very thoughtful and very beautiful. So I do want to make sure that that's crystal clear. My overarching concern is that I have a very hard time approving something when we really don't know what's happening inside. And if it's going to affect the outside, if there needs to be a new window added, something like that, it just seems that there's portions of this that really haven't solidified yet. Regardless of the zoning, regardless of all that, sort of assuming that this could get approved as an office space. I'm still uncomfortable with the interior to exterior items that have not been resolved. I feel like on most of the other projects we look at, we're asking about trash corridors. We're asking about how people are going to get up and down places. We're talking about all sorts of things here that in this one, I just feel like aren't quite solidified yet. But I do have a sincere appreciation for the work that's been done on the exterior skinning of it, the beauty of it, the attention to detail on sort of maintaining the existing. I do have a little concern for keeping the bronze. That bumps me out a little bit. I think that it should be upgraded to something newer. Also, attention to the landscaping, I think, is quite nice. However, I have a lot of trouble approving something when we don't know whether or not it's even allowed. And to just, if I may, on a personal note, with my own opinion, I do think, after spending my entire life in Palo Alto and visiting Cine Arts more than once, and reading through all of the public comments that came in, I do have a serious concern about whether we do need more office space. Now, again, that's outside the purview of ARB, whether this gets converted to office or not. But on a personal note, I just would like to say that I don't know if this being an office is actually the right use of this building. So at this point, I'm sort of uncomfortable moving this forward with the questions that are in the air in regards to the interiors, the trash, how the spandrel glass is going to go across with the floor system there. That's going to dramatically change that facade, with how the glass intersects with that second floor level and the mezzanine. I understand an elevator is not required. It makes me uncomfortable to know that there's a second floor that's being built in 2024 that does not have an elevator when you already have a sunken floor capacity to put gears and things underneath it. It's not like it's a slab building where you have no space underneath. Additionally, on that note, I'm very concerned about not getting enough information on how that floor is going to get filled in. So there's a lot of the pragmatics of this project that are making me a little bit uncomfortable pushing it forward. So I'd like to hear what my colleagues think, though, and hear if maybe I'm being a little bit too cautious.
Yeah, I would like to sort of respond to that. It's not such an easy task, this particular task. We're taking a solid building that's been used as a theater, that's totally interior, and making it as open as is reasonable to do, so that your interior faces, this is a justification of what they're doing here, I think, is that they're opening the building to the courtyard on the inside, where it faces a street, you wouldn't want to have it wide open. So they're responding to the exterior issues of movement and people and access, et cetera, I think in a very reasonable way. The back of the building opening to the garden, which is really beautifully done. And the garden details are beautiful and incredible. They're more detailed than the rest of the building, which has to be held back for a while now until they find. So I understand your point is that we're going to approve something that we don't know about the uses of the inside. They don't relate at this point. You have to relate the inside, the way it's going to be presented, to somebody to lease it.
And to speak to that just very quickly, I also understand why they haven't gone farther, right? I think that that's absolutely fair that they haven't pushed it to the depth that it needs to go, because they don't know if it's going to get approved. So this is a little bit circular.
So yes, the mechanicals are going to have to be done completely, a lot of elements are yet to be done, but somebody's going to come along and say, this is a pretty nice space. It's got a great garden in the back. It has a gutsy kind of crazy structural issue of what it describes relative to the rest of the development. I think there's enough of a justification for what has been done.
I have the same hesitation because the interior is not designed, and therefore the exterior is not designed as far as I'm concerned, because whether you'll have spandrel glass or what have you, what the structural system is going to be for this major seismic upgrade, that will likely impact the look of the exterior, although our purview is mainly the exterior. But the whole west side, that's a whole lot of, even at Solar Band 90, that glass is not like insulated walls. So how are you going to sunshade? All of that is not designed at this point. And I feel like just on the basis of how the interior might flush out, I'm not totally sold on not having an elevator either, because that again depends on how you're going to use the space. And note that is how this space is going to be used till the next renovation, right? And that's mezzanine is a very small part of the code that allows quite a bit of things, but that would mean that we need an interior layout that says this purely, like a code analysis to say this purely falls under mezzanine code, and therefore you do not need an elevator. Again, not part of our purview to dictate you have an elevator, but it seems like that's all part of the interior design.
At this
that
point,
would
we are
impact the
closed, so
exterior.
there'll be no further comments. Thank you. though.
So, I mean, like you said, it's cart before the horse. I know until they get their zoning clarified, it doesn't make sense for the applicant to spend more time and effort in doing the inside interior design. That will then result in a revision to what you have on the exterior, and you will likely need to come back to us anyway.
Yeah, I have the same feeling that there are lots of things on pending, but I do appreciate no matter what the function it will be in the future, but I do appreciate that you're thinking about reuse the building instead of tear down and build a new one. And I think your design, just based on what presented in front of us, the design is very elegant, and if it reflects the Arsenal design, it's compatible with the existing, and it's very beautiful. And the backyard is really nice space to a shaded area to have the people to enjoy the outdoor life. But there are just so many things haven't been detailed yet, so it's really hard for, at least for me, to make a decision at this point.
Well, I certainly agree with what has been said about the building and the design of it. But I want to try to bring our discussion and our ultimate recommendation back. We have to make 6 findings to recommend approval. We've been talking about the last 5. And I think all of us would say that right now we could not make those findings because we don't have a complete enough design. I think it's fair to say that we probably could, given the trajectory of a typical project, continue this and get additional work done to make those findings. They could deal with the sun shading and the mezzanine and the elevator, et cetera. I'm having a tough time with finding number 1. And I would like us all to maybe not so much take what we've been told, it's not in our purview, things like that. Because finding number 1 is here for a reason. Finding number 1 was created by the City Council less than 10 years ago. They went through all of these. This is recent. Finding number 1 is clearly related to zoning. It's clearly related to the comprehensive plan. So for myself, I went back through the comprehensive plan last night. And I think the comprehensive plan item policy L1.6 sums it up the best. And it's the one that staff pointed out to us that they think applies to this project. So it's clearly the one we have to find works. And it says the project should encourage land uses that address the need of the community and manage change and development to benefit the community. That seems very clear to me. When I read staff's argument against that, it has to do with the fact that the building is vacant. And it's unclear whether a theater would function as a business. Well, the building is only vacant recently because they want to change the use. As far as I could tell, it was functioning as a fine business up till recently. And I think that's hardly a reason to ignore what the comprehensive plan is saying. I'm driving towards that because I think we should recommend denial of this project based on not being able to make finding number 1. And I do not see how any changes to the design, to the architecture that we're talking about, would change that fundamental fact. I think the changes proposed to this building will not allow us to make policy finding L1.6. Encourage that land uses address the need of the community, manage change and development to benefit the community. It does not. Therefore, we should recommend denial of this to the City Council so they hear loud and clear what we are saying. And I think us as members of the community reflect what more than 1,000 people have said. In the space of, as I understand it, 48 hours, we had over 1,000 signatures on a petition as well. I think we should be listening to that. Again, finding number 1 requires us to find that it's in compliance with the applicable portions of the comprehensive plan. Policy L1.6, encourage land uses that address the needs of the community and manage change and development to benefit the community. If we can't make that finding, we cannot recommend approval. We can't even recommend continuance in this case, in my opinion. Thank you.
I have a comment to make about that. Maybe it's too much in the form of a real estate response, but it nonetheless has meaning because the fact that this, in zoning is a sort of a mixed use of the site here, where it's used for a theater or has been used as a theater and offices and research and development or whatever else is allowed for the rest of the buildings. The theater failed for some reason. It failed. I think it would be terrific if, in fact, it succeeded and could be kept, but it did fail. So now the owners have a onus on them. What do we do with a theater that's failed? I would wish it had succeeded and that maybe you would have more of a change in the zoning on this particular site, that you could add functions to the site that would make it a place for people to go. But it isn't the situation that the owners are facing. So to use the legalities of our zoning against the owner here, in this case, it's against the owner, I just think it's unreasonable. It's hard. I mean, I don't like taking this position particularly, but I think that they have the choice. What are they going to do with this space? What will it be if they don't change it into offices? What could they do? It would be wonderful, actually, if we said to them, why don't you expand on the social uses of this entire space? Because it's a huge, huge site in a very prominent location with all kinds of access possibilities here that, it's a major, major site in the city of Palo Alto. I would say if the council really thought about it, they should think about a replanning of the site rather than just throw it back at them and say, we're not going to approve it. But our statement should be something is missing. And it's, I think, a larger plan for this site. That's my opinion. So yeah, we could reject it and then say, council, go to work on it,
But we're making a recommendation, David. It's not for us to reject it.
Whatever. I'm speaking in a very general term, and I think it's an appropriate response. You have to admit that the site, the way it is designed, has a failing facility there.
I'd like to speak to that if you don't mind, David. I'm looking this up because I was curious. Apparently this was opened in 1971 and operated successfully as a movie theater until 2020, and it closed due to the pandemic. And by 2021, it had officially shut down. So I would like to take that into consideration, that when we say that the Cinemark failed, I think there was a pretty mitigating circumstance there that caused that rupture in something that was otherwise a very long-running movie theater and beloved portion of Palo Alto. Now, Peter, I'm also going to say I'm hear you loud and clear with your passion of your potential for denial. My one question to you would be if they change what it is, right? If, let's say, this is the exact same sort of proposal in the facade, the garden, all of that, but it's an art museum instead, right? Is it potential that they come back and say, okay, we're not going to make it an office, we're going to make it a museum, we're going to make it something else, right? Maybe it's not a theater, but maybe it's something else. Would the best path forward be to deny the application or to continue to a date uncertain and allow them that opportunity to figure out what they really want to use this space for? Because I do agree with you loud and clear that I think that finding number one, policy L-1.6 is not being met. I completely agree. The question is, to move forward in some capacity, is it better to deny and make a statement to the city council, or is it better to allow for a continuance with the open-endedness that if it comes back as an office, it will be denied? So, and Board Member Adcock, I hear you had something to say as well.
Yeah, because Chief, one thing in terms of the theater, my office is not too far from this site. I've been there for about 13 years. And so for some part of that, the theater was running. How successful, I don't think that's for our judgment.
Correct.
Either. I know in the staff report, it said that there's already, right here, announced the potential closure in 2016. And stayed on open till around 2020 at whatever capacity. But as far as denial versus continue, I'm kind of same as what you said now, Chair Rosenberg, because the policy L 1.6 says encourage land use to address the needs of the community, developments that benefit the community. It is how an office space benefits the community is like, it's subjective. You could say a doctor's office benefits a community more so than an architect's office, right? That's all like, we're parsing words here in terms of what the benefit to the community means.
Well, I think we've also heard loudly and clearly from over 40 people that wrote in saying
Yeah,
that an
absolutely.
office would not be a benefit to the community. I can't remember another project we've had since I've been on ARB that had that much public outcry.
Correct.
So-
And then in terms of like what you said, would an art museum or something else be of better benefit to the community? The permitted use does not say it must have a theater. It is just one of the options. Same for hotels, restaurants, and all of that. So as far as does it meet the zoning requirement, I think it's unclear, and it is the council's decision to make. But I don't think because they proposed an office that it makes sense for us to completely deny and shut down the project as far as ARB is concerned.
Peter.
Oh, I'm happy to address that, but so I've been on the board now going on 10 years. We had a similar project to this when I first joined the board within the first year, and it was similarly concerning to what you folks are saying. And I remember feeling very uncomfortable with it, but in the end, we recommended denial. That was a person who wanted to take 4 residential properties and combine them into one large residential compound to make over a half acre of a single family housing. And the comprehensive plan says Palo Alto should be a neighborhood of single family homes, one family per property. And there was no way that project was going to meet that requirement. In the end, we recommended denial of that project because it could not meet that very fundamental tenet in the comprehensive plan. And I still believe that was the correct decision. The applicant in the end proposed an alternate project that did not create a full compound, and the project has moved along in town. And I think that was the right move, though. Anything less than that just lets them continue to change what's against the comprehensive plan. I just think this is fundamentally one of these cases where the intended use is for something else than office here. And we should let the council hear from us loudly that we just can't make finding number 1. The cards are going to fall where they will. Nobody's going to deny this because we recommend denial. The question really is whether we recommend a continuance because we think the architecture can be changed, or whether we do, as I'm suggesting, just let them know that we think it, without a change of use, it can't work. And I know that in the past, we pushed to deny things and sometimes it backfires, but generally I think it does not. What it does is get people on the city council to really think about it from the way we're looking at it. The comprehensive plan is there for a reason. The finding number 1 that we have to find is there for a reason. And there's just no way you could change the architecture to make finding number 1, I believe. Therefore, how can you do anything but deny it?
Can I ask Jody or Claire to just throw your 2 cents in here as well in this regards of denial versus continuance? I would like to hear from staff as to how that may affect the process of this project.
So I think I would generally agree with Board Member Balte that if you have architectural concerns, that would be a good reason to continue the project. But if you have concerns with the use, and more with finding number 1, then denial may be the better course of action.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Any other final comments? I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, I just want to revise my thinking a little bit because obviously replanting the whole site is a whole other issue. And the lesser issue is denial on the basis of it simply not meeting the finding itself. It's reasonable for us to use, I think, the finding as a way of denying the project at this time. And maybe the council will broaden that into a larger study.
I agree with what David's saying, and ultimately, yes, a repurposing of the use of this site is what's needed. And an art museum would be a great use for it, but a theater is desperately needed in town. They're closing all over the place, and all kinds of theaters can be made and used. It's not unreasonable. Are we looking for a motion?
I have a question actually for Claire, because it's absolutely true that a theater would be of benefit. Is it for us to tell the current owners to tell them how to use their site? Because the PC, if I understand correctly, does not specifically say that there has to be a theater on this site, does not specifically say building 6 needs to be a theater. Is that correct?
That's what we are determining basically with council is the actual ordinance language does not specify that. The existing mix of uses up on the site, if that's what we are considering the development plan, the question for council is, does a change in the uses require a zoning amendment? If there's a list of permitted and conditionally permitted uses that's listed out. Does that answer your question, or is that?
Sorry, there's a list of permitted uses. It is not required that each one of the listed uses must be on the site.
Right. And in fact, like for example, there was a hotel use proposed that was never constructed for 300 hotel
Correct.
rooms.
And there are plenty of offices on this site. There's restaurants and all of that. So there is a mix of uses that comes from the list of permitted uses, but it's not, so I'm kind of back to which one comes first? Council's approval that this building can be an office and therefore it comes back to us as an office? Or does it make sense for us to conditionally approve or to a date continue to a date uncertain without being able to confirm finding one? Because I really feel like this council needs to decide first, not us.
Let me offer this to you and everyone then. If staff were coming to us saying that they believe this meets the current zoning code, in other words, this was absolutely allowed, that would change my thinking. Then I would be able to make finding number 1 because it's clearly allowed if the zoning code says so. But staff has consistently interpreted PC zones to be defined by what's built. Usually we think of that as the physical thing. But in this case, what's built defines the use. This building is a theater by its very definition of existence. And so it's complicated. And clearly that's where this has come from. Staff originally felt that way as well, that the PC zone required amendments and changes. Now it's not so clear. This clearly needs to go to city council to decide what this all is. It's unclear what finding number 1, how finding number 1 relates to the zoning code. That's why we default back to another code, an even higher rule about this comprehensive plan. So that's where I feel we can come back to saying, look, regardless of the zoning interpretation you're going to make, we feel it doesn't meet comprehensive policy 1.6. Let the chips fall where they will. The city council is going to have to decide if they want to overrule 1.6 or somehow define comprehensive plan policy 1.6 as it relates to the use of this site. What they're going to face is what Board Member Hirsch has been talking about. There's an issue with this site. It should be rethought. Let them sort that out. For us, let's just call a spade a spade. This doesn't meet comprehensive plan 1.6. There is no clearly defined zoning that we can all agree this applies to or doesn't apply to. So any further changes to make it meet zoning that we don't agree on is not there.
1.6 is not like so set in stone. It says encourage use blah 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 for benefit of the community. That's a very broad statement. right?
But I think part of what Peter's trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Peter, is that part of the onus here is that the change in the existing use of the building is part of the PC zoning. Right? So if there's going to be a change in it, like, right, if they came back and this somehow magically worked as a theater with this architecture, I think we could all be on board being like, yes, it's beautiful, let's do it, fine. But I think the point is that they're changing the theater use from a theater to an office space, and that is directly related to the PC zoning. And to make that adjustment, we need to show that it's a community benefit. And I think it's very clearly from public outcry, it's not.
Yeah.
So.
You know, Board Member Adcock, the second half of that policy, manage change and development to benefit the community. That's quite clear, to manage the change to benefit the community. If you could argue to me that, yes, the office is a benefit to the community, I would change my thinking. I
Is
think,
an empty building a benefit to a community?
no,
There's
that should be-
25% emptiness in Palo
Yeah.
Alto right now for offices. So who
we are
says it's going to be
trying to, we
rented?
are trying to manage the change. Palo Alto consistently has found over the past decade that additional office space is a negative impact
Right.
on the community, increases the housing imbalance. That's why we have things like an office cap. That's why we restrict so strongly how offices are developed here.
Yeah.
If somebody were proposing housing, you might be able to make that finding. They were making an art museum, you might even make that finding. But office space, market rate office space, Class A office space, I think is not a benefit to the community right now. And I don't think that's a hard argument to make. So if you can't make that argument, then you have to find that this finding holds or it doesn't hold. You have to find that we can't make that finding.
Yeah, to me, the finding neither holds or does not hold because the zoning is not clear to me. And therefore
Schroeder's
the
finding.
PC is not zoned to me. What was that?
Schroeder's finding.
Yes, yeah.
It holds, it does not.
So on that grounds, yeah, because we cannot make the finding, then the opposite is true. Just by negative, double negative, I guess.
That's why we have rules like this in our society. It's very rare that we bump into it from the Architecture Review Board, but once in a while, twice in my decade here now, we've seen this. But it doesn't mean we don't have to make that hard choice. And this is one of those times, I'm sorry, but it really is.
Okay, on that note, if you don't mind, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead. You.
All right. I would like to state that I do think that the architecture of this, the landscaping of this, hats off. Seriously, it's been a beautiful design, but I am swayed by Peter's comments very profoundly. And I think that this application is just not conducive with policy L-1.6. And therefore, I make the motion that we deny the project. I recommend denial of the project. Thank you, Peter, for the wording correction. Do I have a second?
Well, I'm happy to second that, of course.
Okay.
Sorry, can we kind of restate the exact
If
language?
I need to have,
Recommend
if I
denial.
need to have a specific wording, it would be recommend denial of the project.
Hold on one second. Let me
Based
share my
on the
screen.
use, the proposed use.
Hold on.
Recommend denial of the project based on the proposed use not meeting policy L-1.6 and finding number 1. If I need to be super specific. Okay.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Sure
Recommend
thing.
denial of the project based on the proposed use.
Use not making finding number 1, not meeting finding number 1. Policy L-1.6. Of the comprehensive plan. Yes.
That's good.
Great. And I have a second from
Yes,
Mr.
absolutely.
Balter.
Yes, I second that motion.
Okay. We'd like to call for a vote. And anyone who disagrees with this, or if this doesn't pass, they'll have a chance to speak to their vote after that as well.
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
Thank you again for your presentation. We know this is hard news to hear, and we appreciate all your time and efforts. So thank you. All right, moving on to the final items of the meeting. We have some minutes to approve. So draft Architectural Review Board meeting minutes for July 18th, 2024. Good job, Dick. That was good. That was a good one. All right. Anyone wanting to make a motion about the minutes?
Motion to approve minutes as written.
Seconded. We'll give everyone a second to just make sure that they've got no notes on this one. All right, let's call for a vote.
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Number 5 on the list, draft Architectural Review Board meeting minutes for August 15th, 2024. Does anyone have any comments?
If no additional comments, I have one minor thing. They spell my name wrong at the roll call.
Oh, Pinkshi. Yep. That's a comment.
Where is this?
On packet page 87.
Under the roll call to order.
Oh. Okay, at the top there.
Yep. Make your motion.
Should we continue that?
Well, it'll get corrected. We don't have to continue it to get it corrected.
I'd like to see that corrected and then kind of come back to us corrected.
Last week, they had misspelling of my name in 17 different places, and we just say, please correct it before they finally submit it. It doesn't need to come back to the board for
Okay
approval,
with
though.
that, Ying?
Yeah.
As long as you are.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
fair.
we can keep the same, yeah, if it happens again in
Whatever
future.
you want.
Want to make a motion?
Oh, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes with the change of my name to
Yep.
be YNG instead of PING.
And I'll second that. Want to call for a vote, please?
Board Member Adcock,
Yes.
Board Member Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Hirsch,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chen,
Yes.
Chair Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 5-0.
And with that, I'd just like to make one final statement to the board. I would like to just thank you all for your very thoughtful, dedicated comments today on both projects, but most specifically the second one. That was a very intense discussion. I think that everyone brought really valid points to the table, and I really appreciated everybody's time and efforts to really strongly consider something that would so dramatically impact our community as a whole. So thank you all for that. And with that, we are adjourned.
No.
Oh, not adjourned.
No,
Sorry. What's going on?
We have a report, there's a ad hoc review at the end.
I don't have an ad hoc here. Excuse me, though, you're correct. We have board member questions, comments, announcements, future meeting agendas, but I have no ad hoc.
We had a,
Sorry.
Usama.
Apologies. Let me clarify that. So the ad hoc committee, there's meeting minutes in here with the secondary meeting. I apologize. I had that approved with the secondary set of meetings, but if you'd like to use the board member
just-
announcements time
we
to
just
go over it,
wanna-
please. Thank you.
we just want to say that we finally approved of the project and agreed that they could do the garbage collection where they recommended it.
Okay.
There was frankly, to broaden that discussion a little bit, we talked about other possibilities, but you would lose bicycle space if you use one scheme. You would lose retail space if you tried the other scheme. In the end, we kind of gave up on the thought of it, making some
Yeah,
improvements.
I forget the exact address, but it was San Antonio project. And I guess to summarize, it's sticking with the original plan was particularly based on the fact that how it was inconveniencing or, not the most ideal for the people who have to deal with the trash on a weekly basis, but any other location was going to greatly impact the large number of residents, whether it's distance to bike parking or the community benefit of the retail space or impacting another unit. So it was kind of, the least worst condition was to remain as is. Yes.
Thank you for the summary, and I appreciate you jumping in there to announce that. And I apologize. I just was like, oh, we read the review in the meeting minutes, so we're good. But no, I appreciate the actual report from you both. Thank you very much. All right, with that, We're adjourned. Thank you.